news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Wednesday, March 2nd. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, minus 12. It's minus 10 in Smiths Falls. And here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. It is day 7 of the invasion of Ukraine by Russian troops. We get the very latest now from City News reporter Jamie Pulfer.
A much clearer picture now of the toll this war is taking as Russia's assault in Ukraine rages on for a 7th day. Ukraine's State Emergency Service now says more than 2,000 civilians have been killed, saying that children, women, and defense forces are losing their lives every hour. And a new message through a translator from Ukrainian President Zelensky to his people on their collective fight for survival, acknowledging many of them haven't slept for a week.
My dears, the time will come when we'll be able to sleep, but it'll be after the war, after the victory, in a peaceful country as we need.
Now, the UN says more than 830,000 refugees have left Ukraine. Russia claims to have captured a major city, the port city of Kherson. This is on the Black Sea. It's something Ukraine denies. And all eyes on the Ukrainian capital still as Russian forces close in as that massive convoy moves towards Kyiv. Hall of Fame boxer Vitaly Klitschko is the mayor of that city and speaks to CNN.
If the Russians come into your city, what will happen? How will they be met?
Will be fight. It's every square, every street.
Now, yesterday, a maternity clinic and a TV tower on the site of a Holocaust memorial were hit in Kyiv. Ukraine's second largest city of Kharkiv more resembles a war zone now where the deadly attacks continue. And a second round of Russia-Ukraine talks is set to happen today. The first round of talks on Monday lasted 5 hours without a breakthrough. Jamie Pulfer, City News.
Now, Ottawa's mayor unveiling a sign of support for Ukraine this morning. Jim Watson will be joined by a representative from the Ukrainian embassy, Andrei Bukvich. The symbol is going to be at the corner of Charlotte and Laurier. That is the site of the Russian embassy. That's happening at 10:30 this morning. City News Time 9:02, and now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
We'll get a little break from the snow with some clearing before we get back into the flurries around 3 this afternoon. Steady snow for the late afternoon into the evening. Could collect a couple of centimeters. The high -2, -15 for the low. It'll feel like -25 overnight. For Thursday, sun and cloud, colder. The high just -12. For today, the high -2.
And right now in Ottawa, -12 degrees. In Smiths Falls, it's -10. Ottawa Senators owner Eugene Melnyk says he is humbled by the acts of kindness, compassion, and support from around the world for Ukrainian people. Melnyk's parents were born in Ukraine. He says we are all Ukrainians today. The team is going to honor that country by including the Ukrainian national anthem along with the Canadian and the American at the rest of the games this regular season. The 50-50 draw conducted by the Senators Community Foundation will donate some of the money raised to organizations that help with humanitarian efforts in Ukraine. He says the Canadian Tire Center will also be used as a drop-off point for donations ranging from medical supplies to clothing and other items needed for the people of Ukraine fleeing the invading Russian forces. He ends an open letter with confidence the efforts combined with others around the world will make a significant difference in the lives of Ukrainian people. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
He's got the news and the views.
He's got views on the news.
It's the Rob Snow Show on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
As they say, don't sweat the small stuff. Okay, what about the big stuff? Hey, welcome to the Rob Snow Show on City News. Thanks for spending part of the day with us. You won't be disappointed. Coming up, the price of gas. Holy smokes, the price of gas. The prediction is the price in Toronto for gas could move above $1.70 a liter as soon as tomorrow. Now, I find that we're usually a few days, maybe a week behind the price in Toronto, here in Ottawa, for the price of gas. So I wouldn't be shocked at all if by sometime next week, gas prices here in Ottawa were around $1.70 a liter. As it is right now, we have it on good authority that gas prices will go up tonight here in Ottawa, maybe by as much as 9 cents a liter, which would put things at about $1.67 or so, average price, regular unleaded for the Ottawa area. And that was the prediction last night from the experts. Last night, after the big move in the oil market yesterday that sent the price of oil, West Texas oil, to $105 a barrel. And it's only gone up since then. The last trade I saw on the ticker, I always have CNBC on in the studio here. The last price I saw for oil on the ticker was 112. 112. Oh, it's back down. 110. 110 now. 110. Just saw it there. But 2 weeks ago, it was 90. And a month ago, it was 85. So in a month, the price is up about 30%. Price of oil is up 30%. And again, I remain puzzled by this because the Canadian dollar, the loonie, almost always used to move in lockstep with the price of oil. If the price of oil went up, usually the value of the Canadian dollar went up. Today, the Canadian dollar is 78.8 cents U.S., but a month ago, our dollar was 78.3 cents U.S. So the Canadian dollar's barely moved. It's like up less than 1% in a month, while the oil price is up 30%. And in a month from now, the carbon tax goes up. It's like, ouch, ouch, everywhere, and ouch. So there are a lot of things happening with the energy market. Most of it is because of the war in Ukraine. And holy, 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 it didn't take long to start feeling the pain here at home. Dan McTagg is our gas price wizard, and he's going to join us a little later in the show. He's with Canadians for Affordable Energy. He's also a former Liberal MP, although he is no fan of this Liberal government. Now, also on things like the price of gas, the price of, the cost of groceries, inflation, the cost of living. You can't talk about that without talking about interest rates. And it's Bank of Canada Day. Yeah, let's throw an interest rate hike into the mix, too. We should get word from the Bank of Canada on raising interest rates within the hour. Strong GDP report out recently. We have this ripping red-hot inflationary environment. So the big question is, can the Bank of Canada keep holding the line on interest rates, or will it finally move them higher? Maybe the case could be made. Maybe it stays on the sidelines because of all the uncertainty created by Russia's invasion of Ukraine. I don't know. We'll find out in an hour. And then we'll have reaction, insight, and analysis from one of Canada's top economists, Doug Porter. He is the chief economist at the Bank of Montreal. Coming up shortly, Chris Elward. He is the national president of the Public Service Alliance of Canada. And he is going to join us to talk about 6 years of problems with the Phoenix pay system. 6 years. The darn pay system used across the federal government, plagued with issues ever since its launch 6 years ago. 6 years ago, and there's still problems, apparently all the time. Excellent reporting in the Ottawa Citizen on this morning. And they're not really even close to getting caught up on the backlog of problems. People not getting paid, people getting paid too much. Some people are retiring from the public service, like they've reached that point in their careers where it is time for them to retire, and they're retiring and they still have issues with the Phoenix pay system. Still haven't been sorted out because some of the issues, they go back as far as 4 years ago. Mr. Elward is quoted in the newspaper this morning as saying, quote, the government has quietly accepted that Phoenix can't be fixed. But it's not for lack of trying. The federal government has spent $1.4 billion. I know. $1.4 billion to try and fix the Phoenix pay system. So Chris Elward coming right up. Dig into federal politics in a big way this morning. We'll score our political fix with Gary Keller from Strategy Corps. He's more on the right side of things. Jeff Turner's with Blue Sky. He is more of the liberal persuasion. And we'll talk about how the Trudeau government has had to do this pivot from the Emergencies Act here at home to the global emergency. Russia invades Ukraine. It has been 7 days since Russia invaded Ukraine. And the Trudeau government was getting some flack early. But there has been a little less of that, I would say, in the last few days. Maybe because the gravity of the situation dawned on people in high office. But we'll also talk about the rising cost of living. Because if this situation in Ukraine was not happening, inflation, I think, would be the story. You know, President Joe Biden, United States President Joe Biden, delivered his State of the Union address last night, and he talked about the situation in Ukraine for about 10 minutes. But he also talked a lot about the American economy. He also talked a lot about inflation and the rising cost of living and how he gets it.
And with all the bright spots in our economy, record job growth, higher wages, too many families are struggling to keep up with their bills. Inflation is robbing them of gains they thought otherwise they would be able to feel. I get it. That's why my top priority is getting prices under control. Look, our economy roared back faster than almost anyone predicted. But the pandemic meant that businesses had a hard time hiring enough people because of the pandemic to keep up production in their factories. And so we have a choice. One way to fight inflation is to drive down wages and make Americans poorer. I think I have a better idea to fight inflation. Lower your costs, not your wages.
All right. But he says he gets it. You know, I get it. High gas prices are hurting the American working class from the American president last night. But the thing is, you don't hear a lot of talk about that from Prime Minister Trudeau. You don't hear him saying, I feel your pain. This is just my own impression of things. I mean, $1.70 a liter for gas in Toronto tomorrow, Canadians will be looking for someone to blame. And they can't vote Putin out of office. It is getting tough for a lot of people. Angus Reid has a survey this week. The Angus Reid Institute had a survey this week. Angus Reid Institute asks Canadians, and this was in the middle of February, okay, more than 2 weeks ago now. Life has only become more expensive since this survey. The question was, could you afford a $1,000 emergency expense? Whatever, something goes wrong with the vehicle, you need a new refrigerator, whatever. Could you afford an unexpected $1,000 expense right now? Half of those surveys said, no, I'm tapped out. I have no more money. We're going to talk about that. 9:30 for your political fix. And then right after the 10 o'clock news, it's the Talk Back Hour. We do that every morning between 10 and 11 o'clock. An hour of phone calls, opinions, your opinions. I have a few opinions of my own. David has his own opinions. Today, I have a worry list. It's not only a worry list, it's a big worry list. I call it my big list of worries. 5 things I'm worried about. Inflation, the war, COVID-19, the polarization of our politics, and climate change. My list of 5 big worries. What are you worried about? Don't sweat the small stuff. What about the big stuff? This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
My name is Pamela Caillou. I'm a local artist. I'm Métis, and the heritage derives from Algonquin and Huron background. That comes from way, way back from the 1600s. I was trained in school classically, like we studied the masters like Picasso, Michelangelo, Van Gogh, and so you'd have to say it's quite different, my style. What I've done is taken the skills that were taught to me by traditional painting and incorporated that with the Indigenous heritage. My art pieces incorporate the energy and spirit of the Mother Earth in pretty much every single one of them, because I want people to realize, even though we might think we are the masters of the domain here on the planet, that is not the case. It's the Mother Earth that's providing a balance and our causes to live and whatnot. And it's just to always see her and remember her and respect her. Well, I try to keep my style different because there are like a handful of Canadian artists that are really well known, like Norval Morrisseau and whatnot, but it's been done. So I kind of want to stay away from the pack, and that's what makes my artwork a little more unique. But at the same time, if you're looking at it, you do know it's Indigenous and you do know it's the woodland style. I usually start by coming up with an idea, which would be, let's say, 4 days. Well, it depends what's inspiring me at the time. It could be a lot of trees, it could be water, it could be the medicine wheel. I would choose a subject and try to really incorporate what it is I want people to see from that. So then from there, I would have sketchbooks and I do little sketches of everything because the canvas is expensive. So you don't want to start something and have to throw it away. And then from there, I go on to the bigger piece on the canvas. Once I have on my sketches the direction I want to take my artwork in. I chose a lot of vibrant colors for the pieces because if somebody is willing to make the commitment to have my piece of work in their home, I would actually like them to come home after a long, hard day, and some days aren't so great, to look at something that's very joyful.
Keep up with Rob.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
6 years of problems with the federal government's Phoenix pay system. And the national president of the Public Service Alliance of Canada, Chris Elward, joins me this morning on City News. Good morning.
Good morning, Rob.
It's nice to hear from you. How would you describe the state of the Phoenix pay system right now for your members?
Well, it's a disaster, as you said, Rob. 6 years later, and there's not a single pay period without issues. It's affecting thousands, if not tens of thousands, of federal public sector workers are still being impacted by pay issues. And right now, we know that the backlog of Phoenix pay issues sits at about 141,000 cases. And as I said, that's 6 years out. So obviously, and we know that we're years away from getting a new pay system in the federal public sector. So what we're asking for, 6 years later, is for the government to hire more compensation advisors to fix the pay issues more quickly and to eliminate the backlog of problems. As I said, 141,000, and some of them are still dating back to 2016. So obviously it's incredibly frustrating. 6 years into Phoenix, the government still hasn't done what it takes to make it right, despite repeated warnings, from unions and a scathing Auditor General report back in 2017. So public sector workers want to see an end, obviously, to their pay problems, and they shouldn't have to keep waiting.
So this backlog, 141,000 cases. What would it take to whittle that down?
Well, look, I mean, this is what's in the backlog. I mean, every day we have, employees within the federal public sector changing jobs, changing departments or agencies, and then that's causing further backlogs as well.
Right.
So again, I mean, the government desperately needs to hire more compensation advisors to fix the problems. The pay advisors that are currently there, they're doing the best they can. But as I said, it's not like, okay, all of the issues have stopped and now they're going to be able to concentrate on just a backlog. Every every single payday, there's still more and more issues regarding pay. I mean, we're talking like 300,000 people plus now, because you've got those who are still active, working within the federal public sector, and you've got thousands who retired since 2016 who are still suffering from pay issues, even though they retired.
Yeah. How would it affect a retiree? Can you give me some insight into that, how it would affect someone who has retired from the government?
Yeah, I mean, if your pay, if when you retire, if your pay is not correct, then your pension is going to be obviously in error as well.
Okay.
So a lot of the people who have retired, they're still having issues around that, still trying to get the right amount so that their pension amounts can be properly reflected. And it's, as I said, it's very frustrating.
You mentioned the pay workforce. It's in the newspaper this morning. Sources familiar, I'm reading from the Citizen. Sources familiar with Phoenix say the problems dogging the system can be fixed with more pay advisors. PSPC has already quadrupled its pay workforce to 2,500 people since Phoenix was launched. 2,500 people. Not enough? Not enough?
Not enough. I mean, as I said, 140,000, 141,000 cases still in the backlog, some of them dating back 6 years. It's obviously not enough. Like I said, I mean, this system was rushed in, was rushed through, and it was put out the door way too soon. Despite all of the warnings back in, 2014, 2015, 2016, we were warning the government at the time that this is simply not going to work. You haven't done enough due diligence to really put this product out the door. They did, and 6 years later, federal public sector workers are still facing pay issues, payday after payday.
Yeah, and it was supposed to be a modernization of what the government considered to be an antiquated system, and the previous government, the Harper government, promised that it would save hundreds of millions of dollars. It's done anything but, of course.
Exactly. We're north of $2 billion now that this system has cost taxpayers.
What appear to be common problems? Is it so widespread and the just so myriad of problems that you just can't kind of isolate them,
Yeah, some of the more common problems are, for example, when employees move from department or agency to another department or agency, and how long it takes for their pay file to be brought up to date. So they're sitting in a new position, expecting to see new pay rates, and they're not seeing those pay rates for a year, maybe 2 years later, after they've transferred into another job. So certainly that is an issue, as well as new hires when people come on, join the public service, and making sure that their pay is correct from day one, which seems to be a great challenge for sure.
Okay.
And then, of course, as I said, there's retirees. When people retire, making sure that their pay is correct so that their pension is reflected in the correct amount as well.
Okay. What happens when someone has an issue? Let's say I'm a dedicated public servant, and on my payday, I expect a deposit in my account of X amount of dollars, and there's an obvious error. It's short. I'm short. And as a result of I'm suffering financial anxiety, and I have to seek out some help. What happens in a circumstance like that?
Well, certainly, I mean, you can go to your department and raise the issue there. If that's not successful, then you can contact, if you're a member of the Public Service Alliance of Canada, you can certainly contact us, and we will try to get that issue expedited and help you resolve that particular pay issue. Talking about some of the more common issues, I mean, it's also the people getting overpaid.
Yes, overpaid
as well, right?
Yeah.
And then, saying, hey, you paid me too much, and then being told, yeah, but don't pay it back yet. We'll figure it out. And now what they started doing just last year, because as I said, we're coming, on Monday, this past Monday, February 28th, was the 6th anniversary. And you only have 6 years to collect a debt within the Crown. So what they're trying to do now is scramble, going back 6 years and sending these letters out to employees saying, you have a debt to the Crown that's due, and you have to acknowledge this. And they're going like, I don't owe any money. You didn't overpay me. And probably not realizing that overpayment was probably $15, $20 on a paycheck that you probably wouldn't have noticed. Wow. And then 6 years later, you're getting this notice saying you've been overpaid. Yeah. As I said, it's just a complete mess. And
and there are problems at tax time too, right? Tax time is, will be here soon enough, and it causes all kinds of headaches when people try to do their income tax. So
exactly.
Yeah.
We negotiated damages, last year, $2,500 in damages. We still believe that they shouldn't be taxable. The government made them taxable, and now our members are going to have to file individual appeals, saying that these monies should not be taxable. And as I said, it's just a complete mess, a complete fiasco, and it's become a national disgrace, really. And that's why we're asking now, basically saying it's time for a national inquiry, a public inquiry into this Phoenix system, and to get to the bottom of it, because people have to be held accountable.
Well, it's cost careers, like people have quit, exactly. Promising careers in the government, just.
That's right. People lost homes, have lost, their livelihoods, basically, because of this mess.
Yeah. So what is the timeline for, procurement-wise for a replacement for Phoenix?
Well, right now they're talking about this new pay system, HR to pay, next generation. It's being kind of piloted. They're saying that, in 2023, they're hoping to be able to do a full pilot of it. So we're still, for sure, a couple of years away from seeing any kind of a new pay system replace the Phoenix pay system, for sure. It's unfortunate, but, you can imagine, Rob, 300,000 employees, they don't all make the same pay, obviously. They don't all have the same, working arrangements in respect to hours of work and that. Yeah. So it is a complicated. Then you got people who work with the Coast Guard and ships crews. They have a very convoluted leave system. Yeah. So it's certainly not a, one size fits all.
Yeah, and life changes. People have children. People get married. People get divorced. All kinds of things happen that can affect one's pay, right? So
that's right. Exactly. Yeah. Yep. And if your pay system is not able to keep up with it, you're going to have a mess. We're in a mess.
Yeah. 6 years of mess.
Exactly.
Mr. Aylward, very generous with your time. Thank you, sir.
Always a pleasure, Rob. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Yeah. National President, Public Service Alliance of Canada, Chris Aylward. This is the Rob Snow Show, where you will score your political fix right after the news on City News.
one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Wednesday, March 2nd. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, minus 11. It's minus 8 in Smith Falls. Here's what's making news at this hour. Russia says it has only targeted strategic and military sites in Ukraine. That country, though, says more than 2,000 of its civilians have been killed in the week of fighting already. The second largest city in Ukraine looks like a war zone today, and Russia says a meeting has been scheduled today, but Ukraine says that has not been confirmed. The mayor and an official with the Ukrainian embassy will be at the corner of Charlotte and Laurier in about 1 hour from now. Jim Watson says they will be unveiling a sign of support. That's the location of the Russian embassy. Gas prices are headed for another price never seen before in the city. Prediction, the price hike tonight, the price per liter will be close to $1.70 a liter in Ottawa. This as the price of oil hovered this morning around $110 a barrel before receding slightly. Ottawa police are looking for help. They're trying to identify two people wanted in connection to a stabbing. It was January 31st, just after noon, an incident in the parking lot at Elmvale Mall between two people and a victim. That person was stabbed after being pepper sprayed. Pictures are up at our website. City News Time 9:32. I'm Andrew Boyle. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Firm.
Fair.
Fun.
The Rob Snow Show returns
On Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM.
and 1310 AM.
It's time to score your political fix with Gary Keller, Vice President, Strategy Corps. Good morning, Gary.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. I've missed you.
It's good to be back.
Welcome back. Welcome back. Jeff Turner, I missed you too, Jeff Turner.
Oh, thanks, Rob.
Vice President at a Blue Sky Strategy Group. So let's launch right into it. It's such a complicated world. It's been 7 days since Russia invaded Ukraine. Canada has imposed sanctions. It has sent both lethal and non-lethal military aid. There is a pledge to try and fast-track immigration and refugee claims. Gary, let's start with you. What is your opinion of the Trudeau government's response to this global crisis so far?
Well, if I were to give them a letter grade, I'd probably give them a solid B on this. Look, they've been working very much in lockstep with other governments around the world in coordinating our sanctions regime, which is not necessarily an easy thing to do. Having lived through this as a chief of staff to a foreign minister, the immigration and refugee claims fast tracking is a positive. The matching funds for Ukraine in terms of dollars raised is definitely a positive. And I think we should actually be thankful that we have somebody like Chrystia Freeland who understands the geopolitical situation in Ukraine and obviously her heritage, sitting as the finance minister with some control over the levers. The reason why I don't necessarily give them a higher grade is there's one big black mark that they have.
Okay.
And remember in 2015, one of the very, very first things Justin Trudeau did was to appoint Stéphane Dion as foreign minister. And Dion's one of his very first priorities as foreign minister was to normalize relations with Putin's Russia. He said the Conservatives and Stephen Harper didn't get diplomacy. He met with Sergei Lavrov. He wanted deeper ties. They lifted sanctions against Lukashenko and Belarus. And basically in their press release, they actually said, Canada's back. That's the kind of leadership we saw from Stéphane Dion. He's now our ambassador to Germany and our EU special envoy. He spent the last week in Armenia, one of the only countries to basically be silent on the Ukraine crisis and actually support Russia at the Council of Europe. Yeah, okay. That's a big black mark against Canada. Okay. Why is he still representing Canada abroad?
Well, that's interesting.
He should be gone. He should be fired immediately because Canadians need to speak with one voice.
Well, and in Germany, they've had, Gary, as I'm sure you're aware, this epiphany, right, in the last
Absolutely.
week. So, that's
German policy on energy, on security, on the EU, it's done a complete 180 in the matter of actually basically a 30-minute speech from the new chancellor. And so the world is moving very fast, and it's going to continue to move fast. And so Canada needs to continue to remain in lockstep, continue some of the good work that they're doing, and even push farther and faster and in support of Ukraine.
But a B. Okay, that's a higher grade than I thought you would give them. Jeff Turner, Vice President of Blue Sky Strategy Group, as I mentioned, sanctions in coordination with our allies, lethal and non-lethal military aid, trying to make some progress on the immigration refugee side, which can be laborious at the best of times. But what's your opinion of the Trudeau government's response so far to this crisis?
Yeah, and I think Gary provided a good analysis. I think we have had a very strong response, and we are leading among our allies. We got a shout out in the speech, State of the Union speech last night from the President of the United States as one of those key allies. I think it's undoubted that work is happening at a diplomatic and a leadership level. The Prime Minister is plugged in directly with his colleagues around the Western and NATO alliances. So I think we really are in that top tier of countries who are pulling their weight in the way that we are doing it now, which is diplomatically and through sanctions, of course, not militarily. Besides those other supplies of arms and other training things, I think if you look at it, it's a continuation of work that we've been doing for a long time, specifically with Ukraine. Canada's been one of the closest allies to Ukraine throughout the last many years, since 2014, when Crimea, of course, was annexed by the Russians, and that sort of began that slow war that has now all of a sudden sped up very quickly. And so I think that that work is an extension of what's been happening for the last 7 or 8 years, and so it is very natural this government was able to didn't have to pivot, didn't have to create a whole new infrastructure to work on this issue. It already existed and it was already chugging along, and so we were able to plug right into that international scene, and I think we are pulling a significant amount of weight as one of the allies of the Western group.
Okay. We have a clip here. This is from the question period on Tuesday. It's the interim Conservative leader, Candace Bergen, asking whether our government will expel the Russian ambassador. Roll tape on that.
MPs came together to express their support for Ukraine and their disgust for Putin and what he's doing. One of the things that we asked the government to do to reflect that is to expel the Russian ambassador. The Deputy Prime Minister yesterday said silence is complicity and following orders is not an excuse, and we would agree with that. In light of the silence from the Russian ambassador, will the government expel the Russian ambassador and recall our ambassador back to Canada?
Okay. So they still haven't done that. Is that a valid criticism? What do you think of that, Jeff?
I think it's one of those tools in your diplomatic toolbox. I note the Russian ambassador to Canada released a patently ridiculous piece of propaganda yesterday that is straight out of the Kremlin. So maybe that case is stronger today than it was many days ago, when there hadn't been that local, in Canada, voice being put to the lies of the Russian state. I think it's one of the, if you talk to a diplomat, they'd say sometimes it's better to, maintain those channels of communication, especially when we're talking about the potential for this to turn into a hot conflict where obviously the full arsenal of the West and the the Russian state are potentially squared off with each other. So I think maintaining that is the prerogative of the diplomats, the diplomatic corps, and if they have a reason to see that as positive, I don't want to question their judgment. But if the Russian ambassador is proving to be a useless conduit, and I think that statement yesterday goes a great distance to proving that, then that's the kind of move that our diplomatic corps can look at and recommend to the leadership of the government.
Kick him out, kick them all out is what Peter MacKay had in the National Post. Is kick him out, kick them all out. Gary, what do you think?
Yeah, look, that statement, I read it. It's about 6 paragraphs long and not a word of a lie. Every single line in that is just a complete falsehood, a complete lie. It's actually a provocation. And I've, as mentioned, I was the Chief of Staff to a foreign minister. We didn't hesitate to kick out ambassadors and diplomatic missions like Iran and others when they were violating human rights and they were actively working against Canada. This is an even more serious situation. They should kick out the Russian ambassador like today, and it's almost too late for that. And if they need a trigger, well, that statement from the Russian embassy last night, it was disgraceful, and every word of it was a lie. And the Canadian government should just take action immediately. Fire him, get him out of here, and recall our ambassador from Moscow. You can have other diplomatic channels in place. You don't have to take home all the diplomats from the embassy, but it's a strong sign that this is unacceptable.
Okay. Jeff, who in the Trudeau cabinet is shining right now, in your opinion?
Well, clearly Minister Freeland is in the lead for this issue, as she has been, as in my earlier comments, since the very beginning of this, when the Trudeau government came in 2015 and post-Crimea. It's obviously a deeply personal issue to her, but I mean, beyond that, that's from her Ukrainian background. And she literally wrote the book on Putin's power system and the oligarchs that keep him in power. She literally wrote the book on those dynamics in Ukraine. She's been to Ukraine and caused trouble for the Soviet leaders before the fall in 1991. She's been on this file her whole life, so it is natural that she will lead this file in the response to the government of Canada, and she's doing so very ably and to the point where not just at a national level but at an international level is showing leadership there. So I think it's unquestionable that she's out in front of this, and the Prime Minister, of course, is doing his part very strongly by standing and backing her up, but also, as he does with all of his team often, but also that he's participating at his level with his allies and head of state level partners across Europe and the Western world.
Okay. What do you think about Anand? Just very quickly, Jeff.
She's a great leader. I think it's really she's really obviously been tested by fire, as many people are when they take on a new portfolio, and our supply of arms and other non-lethal support to Ukraine is flowing, and I think that's certainly something that requires political pressure and decision making at the top of that department.
Yeah, I've interviewed her. I interviewed her a few times when she was in charge of procurement. She was doing procurement during the pandemic. She's quite impressive to interview. Gary, who's really doing a good job in the Trudeau cabinet right now, in your opinion?
Well, I might take issue with Jeff's comment that the Prime Minister always backs up his cabinet ministers. I think Jody Wilson-Raybould may have a comment or two about that. But look, it's obviously, Freeland is leading on this. As Finance Minister, she does have the levers to take certain actions, like on the SWIFT sanctions and on some of the banking side of things, and she is clearly out in front. And I think, quite frankly, while the Prime Minister is, kind of the leadoff hitter, he's letting her kind of take a lot of the spotlight just because of her natural ability and her knowledge on this file. And so, I mean, I'm not surprised that she is, being put as the lead as this. Having gone through this before, as I mentioned, you need a strong relationship between the Prime Minister's office and the Minister of Finance, the Foreign Minister and the Defense Minister when you're talking about arms. And it helps if you have good relationships between them all, and certainly those ministers are obviously playing a role here on the diplomatic and the military side of things. But it's really Freeland's the lead on this, and quite frankly, I think the Prime Minister is probably happy to let her lead on this, simply because there's less criticism of him on a day-to-day basis if somebody else is out in front, and he can take the credit for letting somebody else lead as well. So I think it's probably a win-win for him. He doesn't,
okay.
Prime Minister.
Because I want to ask you, Gary, are they outshining? Are they outshining the Prime Minister?
I don't want to say outshining. I mean, when the Prime Minister is the Prime Minister, he's amongst equals, and he's always going to, be out in front.
But surely, to goodness, some people may be watching and wondering, well, why doesn't Chrystia Freeland run the country?
Well, but I mean, I think that, Justin Trudeau is a smart enough leader to say, look, we're having success on this front. Why get in the way of success? I don't need to necessarily, hog the spotlight here when we're having success on a lot of fronts in this way. And I think smart leaders do that. I think they don't always have to be in front of everything. They can let others sort of lead with their sort of direction.
Okay. Jeff?
I agree.
Oh, you're going to talk some sense into me, too. Smarten up, Snow. Okay, yeah, go ahead. All right. Sorry, Jeff.
Oh, that's okay. I agree entirely with Gary's point. It is the role of a leader to often allow their team to take the lead and to back them up in that way. I have an interesting observation, too. I mean, especially as we're talking about war and conflict. Here we are. We have 3 women ministers leading it, including, we talked about Anita Anand just a second ago, what we used to call the Minister of War. And you don't want the Minister of War in front and center. And in this, I think it's better to have that Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister, as Gary said, leading. We have Melanie Joly, very capable Foreign Minister, also doing yeoman's work out there on the diplomatic circuit and with the European Union in particular. So I find that very interesting. And it's actually, the other thing I find interesting is it's reflected on the Ukraine side, too. When I see so much coverage of the Ukrainian government and the government that we are all standing up to defend in a way. I see strong female leaders there too. And what an interesting thing! I bet you wouldn't find a single one in the Kremlin, right? And so I think there's a very interesting dynamic where the West is really showing that we are a united force, and that goes across not just national lines but other lines too. I find that very interesting.
Okay. So when we come back, we'll pivot to domestic issues. When we come back with Gary Keller, Jeff Turner, it's your political fix. I'm Rob Snow, and this is City News.
So Rideau Rockcliffe Community Resource Centre has been around since 1982, and it's here to serve residents of Ward 13. So our focus is on helping to reduce poverty in this community, as well as empowering residents to find resilience within themselves. So one of the new focuses of our centre is around food programming. So you'll notice today when we go around on a little tour that we have a number of food programs here at the center. So one being obviously our emergency food program, which is really great. So residents can come and access food when they are in need. We also have a number of food-based social enterprises here at Rideau Rockcliffe as well. So one being the Ottawa Good Food Box, another being Market Mobile. One of our new initiatives that started this year as response to COVID is called Good Food on the Move, and it's a click and collect online store, and we have 7 pickup locations throughout the city. More sort of local here for Ward 13 residents, we've also started a free produce market as well. So community members can come on Wednesdays and Fridays and be able to access additional free fruits and vegetables.
Social Harvest Ottawa is one of the social enterprises here at the Rideau Rockcliffe Community Resource Centre. We operate this great urban greenhouse, and our work is not only to grow nutritious and delicious food, but also to nourish communities with community members here in Ward 13 and beyond. The greenhouse is a year-round project. We're a team of 4 employees working here. We have 2 full-time employees and 2 part-time employees. We focus on growing microgreens from late fall to early spring, and hothouse crops in the summertime, such as tomatoes and cucumbers.
The Mission Food Truck we're in our 5th week of collaborating with them to come visit our center, and we just got in on it at the right time. They were looking for new communities to branch out to. They said absolutely. Right now they're funded through donations. They travel around Ottawa and just give out delicious, fresh, hot food to people as well. We have at our center the Ottawa Good Food Box, as well as the Market Mobile. So Ottawa Good Food Box has been around for 25 years, and Market Mobile is a little younger, started in 2014. So they both have the mission and the mandate of making fresh food more accessible and affordable in neighborhoods that lack access to a grocery store. So I think the greatest need that we've seen as a result of the pandemic in our community is people that we maybe have never needed to access our services before, right? So a lot of people have had, layoffs. Maybe they're just not able to work because they have to stay home with their children, over the summer, that sort of thing. So we've definitely seen the need go out, particularly for our food programming, as well as some of our counseling services as well. So it's a heavy time for people emotionally.
Community opinion.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
Part 2 of your political fix with Gary Keller, Vice President Strategy Corps, Jeff Turner, Vice President Blue Sky Strategy. So in probably about 10-15 minutes, we'll get the latest news from the Bank of Canada on interest rates. There is anticipation that the Bank of Canada is going to raise interest rates this morning, quite likely by 25 basis points. Not like the Russians going from 9% to 20% overnight, nothing like that. But interest rates will move slightly higher in Canada. Meantime, we have gas prices moving a lot higher, maybe $1.70 in Toronto by tomorrow. A lot of worry about prices of food. Inflation is already at a 30-year high. U.S. President Joe Biden, you mentioned the State of the Union address last night. Joe Biden spent some time talking about inflation last night during his State of the Union address. Let's listen to this here.
And with all the bright spots in our economy, record job growth, higher wages, too many families are struggling to keep up with their bills. Inflation is robbing them of gains they thought otherwise they would be able to feel. I get it. That's why my top priority is getting prices under control. Look, our economy roared back faster than almost anyone predicted, but the pandemic meant that businesses had a hard time hiring enough people because of the pandemic to keep up production in their factories. And so we have a choice. One way to fight inflation is to drive down wages and make Americans poorer. I think I have a better idea to fight inflation. Lower your costs, not your wages.
Okay. Yeah. Hard to do with oil at $110 a barrel, but never mind. Nevertheless, he's talking about it, and he says he gets it. And that's kind of like, working class Scranton Joe Biden right there. I get it. I feel your pain. Right? I get it. I feel your pain. Gary, does Trudeau get it? The struggle that Canadians are having right now about the rising cost of living. Do you get the sense that our Prime Minister gets it?
It's a good question, and I'm flashing back in this conversation to the election campaign when inflation had risen to all-time highs at that point, and Prime Minister Trudeau was asked, are you, monetary policy, inflation, you have control of the Bank of Canada in terms of setting that monetary policy. What are you going to do about inflation? He said, I don't stay up at night worrying about monetary policy. Well, I think that kind of captures the Prime Minister's view of the economy. This is a guy who also said he was going to balance the budget balance itself and grow the economy from the heart outward. I don't think this is a guy who spends a lot of time thinking about economics.
Here he's got Trudeau's greatest hits, like from KTEL here for us. So, yeah.
And this is an increasing issue that is going to dominate people. I mean, it has been for some months now. I think this is a weak spot potentially for the government, and I think where you're seeing Pierre Poilievre, who is the only candidate so far for leadership of the Conservative Party, he is spending a lot of time. He's coined the phrase "just inflation," a phrase that, in fact, the Prime Minister actually used in the House of Commons by accident one day. And I think he's tapping into some populist anger there and some views of people who are saying, I can't get ahead, and I don't think this government takes us seriously. And I think it's a bit of a weak spot for this government. They've turned a bit of a blind eye to it and, hoped that it would get better. It hasn't got better. And I think he does need to address it. And I think, Biden's language is the kind of thing that governments need to do going forward.
Okay. Does the Prime Minister get it? Jeff, President Biden says he gets it. Like, there's kind of this empathy there. I feel your pain. Does Mr. Trudeau feel our pain? What do you think?
Listen, the government's really on top of this in the sense that they know it's a big issue. I think the problem is there's no magic button to push. Even Joe Biden's speech last night, the magic button was, let's try to re-onshore our manufacturers. So that's not going to solve things in a month, right? Mr. Poilievre is out there trying to draw attention to this for his own political fortunes, and that's fine. That's the role of the opposition. He has no proposals to solve this problem. He puts it at the feet of something that every serious economist actually says has nothing to do with it, which is the unemployment insurance over the pandemic and the support for businesses to keep their doors open. That's not what's causing inflation. What is causing inflation, as you mentioned, Rob? Oil. The price of oil is now north of $100 a barrel. I'd point out the government of Alberta just balanced its budget quite conveniently and is no longer an economic basket case as a result. So there's some upside to the high price of oil in Canada. But the high price of oil also is hitting the pumps. And where is that price coming from? It's shipping the crude, and it's the increased supply chain complications of transoceanic shipping and import. You're looking at the food. That's the one that hits family budgets the hardest, and that's the one that's most obvious to see, and that's the one that people worry about the most because you got to feed your family. Again, supply chain issue, right? It's about trucking costs and getting things to market and filling holes on those shelves in the limited amount of products that are experiencing disruptions across that supply chain. And housing is the third big one. I'm in the housing market right now. Let me tell you, it's a nightmare.
Oh, yeah, nightmare.
And the governments are trying to take action on it as well. But none of those are big green buttons you can push to solve inflation.
I know. But my point is just politically, the Prime Minister is pretty good at empathy, like coming across as being empathetic to the troubles that Canadians are experiencing, but I just don't get the sense that he has his finger on this one right now.
Well,
my own impression. Okay.
Yeah, Rob, I think they're trying to find ways that this government is looking to help. So things like daycare costs, right? You have daycare agreements now across the country, with the exception of Ontario, which is a sham. That Ontario hasn't signed up for that program yet. Where parents are spending tens of thousands of dollars a year on daycare, and they can cut that in half immediately. And I think that's a way that you save families money. Extending the children's tax benefit, that's a way that you save families money. Improving labor conditions and improving the labor codes, that's how you make families more secure. So I think there are ways to do it, and that's the way that the Trudeau government.
All right. Yeah, anything to add there, Gary? Anything to add there?
I mean, oil was not on the rise like it is now, back when inflation in the summertime was on the hike. So it's not just oil. Some of these things that just talking about nibbling around the edges. I mean, Mr. Poilievre, what he pointed out is one of the biggest reasons we have inflation is the government has printed billions and billions of dollars and spent billions and billions of dollars. And we need to get back to some sort of fiscal sanity in this country and some sort of fiscal guidepost to help in the fight against inflation. This government's been totally missing on that front.
All right. I wish we had more time for this topic, but I would like a comment from each of you on it. I am growing increasingly concerned about what I call the polarization of Canadian politics. I mean, it's always been partisan. We're always going to be partisans, but nothing like the stuff we're seeing now. Like F. Trudeau, protesters showing up outside the private homes of political leaders. The Prime Minister painting his critics as racist, fringe, people with unacceptable views. Bernier's off the deep end, calling the Prime Minister a fascist. Calling Chrystia Freeland a Nazi. Randy Hillier going on RT of all places to talk about Canadian tyranny. What is happening in Canada with this stuff? A quick thought from each of you, please. Gary, go ahead, Gary.
Yeah, I wish I had a magic bullet to focus on. Look, I think social media has obviously had a huge impact. The speed of social media and the ability that everybody has access to it and can do it. 30 years ago, that wasn't the case. There were limited numbers of sources of news, and communication was much more limited. But I don't think that in some ways, I think as human beings, we're sometimes our brains are wired sometimes to accept conspiracy theories and answer things that we can't necessarily explain away. And I think social media has just amplified that. Coupled with the fact we know there are bad actors out there pushing disinformation. It's a cesspool. I don't know what you do to stop it in a country where we have freedom of speech and freedom of expression. But social media is one of the key factors, and the speed in which it travels these days.
Okay. Jeff?
I agree entirely with Gary. I do lay most of this at the feet of social media. He's exactly right that 30 years ago this was all done by newsletters and meetings in church basements if they had it, or just the things that people grumbled to themselves while chopping wood in the backyard is now something they can put up on the internet for all of their friends and families to see. One of the things that strikes me whenever you see these crowds, whether that's the sort of the right-wing crowds or the left-wing crowds, these agitators, the people we had in Ottawa, very unwelcome for 3 weeks. What's the common theme you see? They all have their phone out. They're all videoing themselves, live streaming their misbehaviors. And I think what the social media business model does is, of course, it rewards the amplification of anger, and it creates this sort of narcissistic, I'm my own channel and everybody wants to watch it mentality. And I can't help but notice that at all these various explosions of protest or whatever you want to call it, especially what we just saw in Ottawa. It really, everybody thinks they're Tucker Carlson, and that's, I think, part of what's really driving the discourse into the crazy zone.
That's very true.
Hey, great stuff. Thank you. All the best to both of you.
Thank you both.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, Gary Keller is Vice President with Strategy Corps. Jeff Turner is Vice President with Blue Sky Strategy. I'm Rob Snow, Talkback Hour. I had a big worry list for you. I want to talk about what you're worried about as well at 750-1310 on City News.
This is City News.
CIWW 1310 AM in Ottawa.
And CJET 1011 FM in Smith Falls and the Valley. Number one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 1011 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Wednesday, March 2nd. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, minus 11 degrees. It's minus 8 in Smith Falls. Here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. The Ukrainian invasion has taken a civilian toll that continues to mount. City News reporter Irene Precklett now with the latest.
Ukrainian officials say so far more than 2,000 civilians have lost their lives, adding children, women, and our defense forces are losing their lives every hour. Among the targets hit over the past week, homes, hospitals, and schools. Russian troops are surrounding the capital city, but people are not giving up. There are numerous roadblocks, people using whatever they can. And in Ukraine's second largest city, Kharkiv, the blasting has had a devastating impact. Homes among the Russian targets. Tada Marhanian is a volunteer medic and says she's seeing her people die.
I do feel so. I've never been more happy to be Ukrainian. I've never been more lucky to be born in this country. We all are uniting. We all are consolidating. And one person maybe is powerless to make a difference, but trust me, we're not one. There are a lot of people fighting.
Ukraine's president says Russian mothers are also losing their children, adding almost 6,000 Russian soldiers have died in the past week. There have been reports that both sides might be meeting again today. Irene Precklett, City News.
City News time, 10:03. Now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
We'll get a little break from the snow with some clearing before we get back into the flurries around 3 this afternoon. Steady snow for the late afternoon into the evening. Could collect a couple of centimeters. The high -2, -15 for the low. It'll feel like -25 overnight. For Thursday, sun and cloud, colder. The high just -12. For today, the high -2.
And right now, -11 in Ottawa. It's -8 degrees in Smith Falls. Ottawa's mayor unveiling a sign of support for Ukraine this morning. Jim Watson will be joined by the charge d'affaires from the Ukrainian embassy. The symbol will be at the corner of Charlotte and Laurier. That is the site of the Russian embassy. The reveal at 10:30. The price at the pumps expected to increase at midnight again. But our senior business editor, Mike Eppel, says the price of oil is so volatile since the Russian invasion of Ukraine began, there is still uncertainty as to just how high the price will go.
Price of the pumps going up at midnight tonight by 6 cents. That is not quite as high as we thought. But again, this market for oil is so variable right now and not necessarily unpredictable, but the price swings are almost unprecedented because this morning we've got the price for oil up another 8%. So this price of the pumps going up 6 cents per liter tonight doesn't even equate for what we're seeing today. So get ready for even higher prices going into the weekend, likely up and around $1.70, if not more. And this global energy market continues to react to perceived supply shortages out of Russia and paying even more at the gas pumps. The days ahead at the City News Business Center, I'm Mike Eppel.
City News Time 10:05. Canada's largest union in the federal public sector calling for a national inquiry into the Phoenix pay system 6 years after that was launched. The issues continue with a backlog of 141,000 files and counting. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Talk back.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
And the Bank of Canada raised interest rates. Bank of Canada's raised interest rates 25 basis points. So interest rates, the overnight rate for the Bank of Canada is now at 0.5%, 0.5%. That's breaking right now. Now, meantime, ladies and gentlemen, 750-1310, 750-1310, 613-750-1310. It's the Talk Back Hour, and there's lots to talk about. I call this my big worry list. Big worry list. And on my big worry list, I have 5 things. The cost of living, okay, inflation, okay, affordability. That's all kind of one line item, one big worry. Trying to keep up with the cost of living. Then you have the war in Ukraine. Okay, that's on my list. COVID-19 on my list, the pandemic, of course, right? But also polarization. I'm really starting to worry about this in our politics, how it's become so polarized. And climate change. Climate change. I put it on the list because it would be on so many other people's lists of things to worry about. Some people think it's the biggest thing to worry about. But my question for you is, of those big things to worry about, what's your biggest worry? At 750-1310, 750-1310, 613-750-1310. I mean, on the cost of living, I can kind of go through these one by one, but I'd really rather hear from you. I'm sure you've heard by now, oil prices, right? Big jump yesterday because of what they call in the markets, they call it the geopolitical premium, which is the war. A war that involves Russia, one of the largest oil-producing nations in the world. And I think one of the crazy things about the jump in the price of oil yesterday was that the rally was so strong, it was so unrelenting, despite the fact that Joe Biden, the president of the United States, announced that he was authorizing the release of oil from the United States Strategic Petroleum Reserve, 30 million barrels. And then other countries are supposed to match that amount, another 30 million barrels, for a total of 60 million barrels. Because Joe Biden's getting hammered in the polls. His poll numbers are not good. He's getting hammered in the polls because of the cost of living and the high price of gas. So this is kind of counterintuitive. And financial markets can seem irrational sometimes because you think they would do one thing, but they end up doing another. You would think that news would dampen the oil price. And it did that for about a millisecond. And then I guess, the commodity traders came to the conclusion, you know what, that's really kind of a drop in the bucket, 30 million barrels. Sorry, I guess, a drop in the barrel. Because then the oil price marched like right up to $105 US a barrel. Before it settled a bit lower than that. But then, right now it's at $109 a barrel. Just kept on going. Because $30 million from the United States Strategic Petroleum Reserve is 4 or 5 days of Russian oil supply. In other words, a drop in the bucket. And, you hear it in our newscast. That's going to hit us all at the pump. Dan McTagg is going to join us a little bit later in the program, our gas price wizard, former Liberal MP. And he told David yesterday, prices in Ottawa will hit new records this week. He said, and I don't know if this is still his prediction because the price of oil is higher now than it was when he made this prediction last night with David. He said the price is going to go up 9 cents between tonight and tomorrow morning, right? That's what he told you.
That's what he said last night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which would put the average price of regular on well above $1.60.
Oh, yeah. Well over $1.60.
And even actually closer to $1.70 than $1.60.
And that's the average.
$1.66, $1.67, right?
The average price.
Yeah, like how people can afford premium fuel. Like if you're driving a fancy German car that takes premium fuel, I don't know how you're affording that thing. But I guess if you can afford a fancy German car, you can afford the fuel. And that is, that's going to ripple throughout the entire economy because fuel is such a major input cost, right? And then next month, carbon tax goes up. And in Toronto, maybe by tomorrow, average selling price for gas could be $1.70. And, as I said, we're about a week or so behind Toronto's price, so I wouldn't be shocked to see $1.70 sometime next week in Ottawa. And that's painful, and that's inflationary. And we already have the highest inflation readings since the early 1990s. And now the situation in Ukraine, it's not only about oil prices or natural gas prices. It's also causing a big jump in the price of agricultural commodities, very basic foodstuffs, like the basic ingredients of food products that would be on anyone's shopping list. Anyone's shopping list. As I mentioned in my Snow and 60 commentary yesterday, we're only 3 months into the year. Soybean prices up 24%. Wheat futures at the start of trading yesterday up 15% so far this year. Corn prices up 17% so far this year. Oat futures. Granola bars, David. Doubled in price. They've doubled in price. Oat futures.
Is oat milk supply managed? What does that do to oat
I don't
milk?
know. And it's no better in the meat aisle. Like, holy cow. You know what it's like. Like, gosh, you just look at the prices and keep on going. I was looking at cattle futures and lean hog futures and all of these things. I get lost in all this stuff. They're all up. And yesterday, both wheat and corn futures were known as what's limit up on the markets, which is limit up means that the price has gone up the most it's allowed to go up in one day on the commodities markets. You hit a certain level, trading stops because it's what they call limit up. The price can't go any higher that day. That happened yesterday because Russia and Ukraine are major exporters of both of those, corn and wheat. So, I mean, we're all going to feel this, right? We're all going to feel this. At the grocery store, at the gas station. The cost of living, inflation, it was hot already. Like I said, highest inflation reading in more than 30 years. That's why we have the Bank of Canada raising interest rates today. Is this your biggest worry right now? The cost of living, the rising cost of living, the price of food, the price of gas, the cost of housing, whether that's, you're trying to buy a house, you're trying to buy your first house, you're trying to rent an apartment, affordability issues. 750-1310, 613-750-1310, 750-1310, Talkback Hour, Rob Snow Show. Dave in the West End. Dave.
Hi, Rob.
Hi, Dave. Yeah.
Boy, your list is my list.
Really? Okay.
Really.
Okay.
But I watched him last night.
Joe Biden. Yeah, okay.
I can hardly say the name. And before, I wrote a few things down, and I wrote 4 pages down of what he said incorrectly. But the whole thing boils down to that the whole thing last night was empty, and it was nothing but a speech that contained hyperbole.
Hyperbole. Okay.
Hyperbole.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
But a couple of the things, like, do you know that Putin in 1997 vowed not to allow NATO next to Russia? In 1997, he made that vow.
Yeah.
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 And Biden's new boogeyman is the shipping people now. But it all boils down to gas and oil, the dollar, right?
Well, yeah, but it's the little people are the one paying the price.
Well, certainly the big people don't have to. Why would they? They're driving electric cars.
But like $1.65 a liter. $1.70 a liter for gasoline is painful.
Well,
but at least Biden, and I'm not a big fan, that, but at least Biden, he acknowledges that the American working class is hurting because of this. Now, I don't think he's got the right plan to deal with it, but at least he acknowledges that it's painful, which is more than I think we can get out of our prime minister, which is so frustrating for me, Dave. Thank you.
It's true. It's frustrating for everybody.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. Sure. Thanks, Dave. Yeah. Be right back. It's my big worry list. The cost of living, the war in Ukraine, COVID-19, the polarization of our politics, climate change. What's your biggest worry right now? 750-1310, Rob Snow Show. City News.
Well, we all loved our rock T-shirts growing up, right? It was our badge. Hey, we went to this concert. We knew that band inside out. So we kept doing that and kept promoting that. What's sort of happening now is that audience is dying. I always say the earth is flat. So the 60s rockers are falling off the end of the earth. So you don't see as big a sales anymore because my audience is disappearing. What's sort of helping to promote that history is the kids are buying vinyl. And luckily we have a vinyl shop in the neighborhood here, Record Center. So what's happening is I've seen kids come in with their dad. And the dad say, hey, do you have any Beatles shirts? Do you have any CBGB? Do you have any of this? I said, well, why? He said, well, because my daughter's into it. She's wearing my T-shirt. So slowly it's coming back, right? The kids are, I think, getting fed up with the generic music that's out there. And they want to click into something that, first of all, links them to their parents, something that they thoroughly enjoy now, and maybe they're passing it on to their grandkids. Pandemic has been a couple of things, definitely hard on everybody. So much messaging that's out there that people don't understand, stats that every day, Jesus Murphy, like I'm getting a headache just reading this stuff, right? So really it was just trying to understand where we were going to go from there. The city of Ottawa all of a sudden said, everybody's got to wear a mask. You got to wear it on the bus. People were scrambling, okay? And I had, the store next door had really big windows, so I just flooded the window with masks. Well, that was the activity that saved the business. People were coming in buying 2, 3, 4 masks at a time at $20 a pop here. But my masks were so different. They were the Rolling Stones, Beatles, Queen, all the pop culture. Everything else out there was medical masks. And right, so people said, oh, I don't want to do that. I want to show my rock and roll. So it became the new T-shirt as far as I'm concerned. Well, what I've done, I'm Hindenburg. I'm now at 1114A Wellington Street, which is next door to the Fab Gear store. And the reason I've changed names, I've rebranded the store, is because I was planning on retiring. And in December, I go, oh, I'm not going to retire. But I've committed to changing what the store is about. So I came up with a new name, Fab Gear's Rock Shop, where legends are dressed. And essentially get that message out. I prefer, if the shirt don't fit, you come in, you try another one on. People like to feel the fabrics with clothing. It's amazing. Y'all come in and go, oh, I love that. Oh, can I try this? So that's the big difference. I'm not out to make a gazillion dollars. I stick the way I am, old school. I take cash, we take cards. Come on in and talk to the owner.
Time to talk back.
On the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
Okay, so this is interesting. Our correspondent in Toronto with City News is Richard Southern, and he's at Queen's Park today. And he says that the Ontario New Democrats are going to table a bill today that would seek to regulate the price of gas. Regulate the price of gas. The Ontario Energy Board can and should regulate the retail price and wholesale markup of gas so the prices are fair, stable, competitive, regardless of where you live. Now, the Ford government has a majority government. We're mere months away from an election, so this is likely going nowhere. But this is how they do it in Nova Scotia. They regulate the price of gas, and they have an agency that basically sets the price of gas, and the price of gas is set on a weekly basis. And it can get complicated, and even I don't know all the ins and outs of it because I haven't lived in Nova Scotia for more than 30 years, but my father lives there. And basically, as I understand it, this regulator says you're only allowed to sell gas for this much, and it sets a maximum level to give the retailer a little margin. But what happens is every gas station in Nova Scotia sells it for the highest allowable price. And that price is set Friday night, and all the gas stations change their price Saturday morning. And you can pretty much go from one end of the province to the other, as I understand it, and every gas station sells it for the same price. You may save a few pennies a liter right now because Nova Scotia's gas price doesn't reset until Saturday morning. You know what I mean? Whereas Toronto would be $1.70 tomorrow. It might not be $1.70 in Halifax until Saturday. But that's interesting. We should get an expert on how they do that in Nova Scotia, because I probably haven't explained it very well. Anyway, Justin, Ottawa South, you're on City News.
Morning, how are you doing?
I'm good, sir. How are you?
Good, thanks. Just going to keep it short and sweet here.
Sure.
I just want to be heard.
Yeah.
I'm a 24-year-old construction worker.
Yep.
I work about 60 hours a week on average.
Okay.
Got a girlfriend who has an entry-level government job. And we've been finding it extremely hard to go to the grocery store, get the fridge stocked, keep gas in the car. And I just wanted that to be heard. And I also want to touch on Trudeau and all his policies and how divisive it's all been. I see it everywhere.
Yeah.
It's concerning.
Absolutely, sir. So you're finding, you're a working couple.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Making a decent money, right?
Yeah.
Not a lot of money, but decent money. Decent,
yes.
Kind of middle class money. Would you say you're middle class? Consider yourself middle class? Yeah.
Yeah, lower to middle class.
Yeah.
And it's hard to keep up.
It's hard,
I'm
right?
getting extremely burnt out. You can only work so many 60-hour weeks in a row.
Sure. Yeah.
Doing what you can, and that's all. I just wanted to keep it short and sweet. Hopefully,
absolutely,
somebody hears that from younger population.
Good stuff, buddy. All the best, man. 24 years old, working 60 hours a week. He's my hero. John in Rockland. John.
Good morning, Rob.
Hi, John.
I was listening to a program on BNN, and there was an expert at energy companies, and he was telling us that every oil company in North America is drowning in cash. Not one of them has one single debt, which means that the price of oil right now is way too high, that these companies are not borrowing, they're not in debt, they're not in jeopardy of collapsing. So the price is based on abuse of power. There's a situation, and the companies are taking advantage of it. It's price gouging.
You think we're being gouged? Do you think we're being gouged by the oil companies?
Yeah, well, if it's taking about $50 to produce oil at a profit, and we're up there over 100 and something.
Right.
Yeah,
but if the big oil companies could set the price of oil like that and gouge people, then why wouldn't they do that all the time? Why wouldn't the Alberta oil companies be doing that all the time? Alberta oil companies also almost went belly up because the price was so low for so long.
That's right. But the situation,
it's the commodity markets. It's the commodity markets. It's the speculators in the commodity markets that are driving the price of oil up. It's not the oil companies.
Also profiting the oil companies. Right?
Well, the oil companies, the oil companies are doing well now, but who knows? Maybe a year from now, they're not doing so well. 2 years ago, you remember the price of oil went negative. It went below zero because nobody wanted it because the entire economy was shut down, right, John?
Yeah, that's right. But this now is hurting everybody. And as the gentleman prior to me said,
it's hurting,
the financial stress, not only the financial stress, which will lead to emotional stress, psychological stress.
Yeah.
It's a bad recipe for society.
Like, to me right now, the cost of living is the big worry. It's the big worry. Right? Yeah. Well, yeah. Oil. Yeah. Major input costs. Of course. Yeah. Energy. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. You don't run a freight train or a freight liner on wind power. John in Ottawa. John.
Hi, how's it going?
Hi, John. It goes, sir. Thanks for calling. You're on City News. Go ahead.
Thanks for having me. I think one of my biggest worries is when I was watching some of the live feeds of the House of Commons.
Okay.
And there was a member of Parliament from Ottawa who asked a question over the telephone, over the Zoom thing. You know.
Yes.
He wasn't in the House of Commons, and he said that he wanted to. He said that there was a statement from Klaus Schwab, who is the World Economic Forum director. And he said that he stated that they have infiltrated our Canadian cabinet, and that there are members of Parliament who are working for their agenda. This Agenda 21.
Agenda 21. Are you really onto that? Agenda 21. Really?
Well,
oh my gosh, I haven't heard somebody wax on about Agenda 21 in like 10 years and all that crazy stuff.
But you know what, sir, is that everyone laughed at all the conspiracy theorists, and now everything's coming true. And people need to stop laughing and mocking all the conspiracy theorists and start realizing that it's conspiracy realism.
Yeah. The World Economic Forum is like an annual gathering, right, in Davos, right?
Right, yeah, I know that. But I'm just trying to say is that when this member of Parliament tried to ask this question, the Speaker of the House actually cut him off.
Right.
Said that he couldn't hear the question.
Okay.
And, it was very suspicious when I watched that. It just made me seem...
Okay. Yeah, see, this is what I'm talking about. This is the polarization stuff that I said is one of my worries, and it's made my big worry list. Now, that kind of stuff. Rob Snow Show. Be right back. Halftime Talkback Hour. This is City News.
In Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Wednesday, March 2nd. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, minus 8 degrees. It's minus 6 in Smith Falls. And here's what's making news this hour. Civilians not trained in the military continue picking up arms in Ukraine to defend their nation. 2,000 civilians, including children, have been killed now in the Russian invasion that has forced civilians into the fight. Ukraine says the cost to Russia, though, is also high. It's saying that over 6,000 Russian troops have been killed so far, and that number doesn't include any that might have been killed in clashes last night. Prices at the pump may not increase quite as much as we thought earlier this morning, but still expected to climb by 6 cents a litre tonight at midnight. With uncertainty surrounding the world oil price per barrel, at one point this morning, that was over $110 a barrel. There is no estimate right now on just how high the price at the pumps may go. Ottawa Senators owner Eugene Melnyk says he is humbled by the acts of kindness, compassion, and support from around the world for the Ukrainian people. Melnyk is Ukrainian. His parents were born there. Even though he was born in Canada, he says he has that deep connection and says we're all Ukrainians today. The team will honor that country by including the Ukrainian national anthem along with the Canadian and the American at the rest of the home games this season. City News Time, 10:31. I'm Andrew Boyle. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Talk back.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
So again, I call it my big worry list. I want to know how it compares with a list you might have. What's your biggest worry right now? On my list, I have the cost of living, the war in Ukraine, COVID-19, the polarization of our politics. I also have climate change on my list. I mean, on the cost of living, I think we're well on our way to an affordability crisis in this country. Angus Reid had a survey out this week asking, could you afford an unexpected emergency that cost you $1,000? And half of the people said, no, I could not. No, I could not. I'm tapped out if something, whatever, goes wrong with the car, the appliance conks out, need to buy a new, whatever, refrigerator, whatever the situation is, and it costs about $1,000. Half of those surveyed said they'd be hard-pressed to come up with the money. And that poll was done in the middle of February, like 2 weeks ago, which seems like a lifetime ago now. Oil was $90 2 weeks ago. It was $105 yesterday. Food, fuel, housing, $800,000 for a house in Ottawa. More than $1,500 for an apartment in Ottawa. Average rent now, according to the Ottawa Business Journal. It said, the OBJ report said $1,550 a month for a two-bedroom is now the average rent for a two-bedroom in Ottawa, according to CMHC. David, that seems to be on the low side to me. $1,550 a month for a two-bedroom?
A two-bedroom?
Average?
Yeah, no,
average?
That's on the low side.
That's on the low side. CMHC says that's the average two-bedroom rent in Ottawa, $1,550. I would say if you can find a decent two-bedroom apartment for $1,550 a month in Ottawa, I would jump all over that.
Yeah, one that's in decent shape, like good condition, not student housing. A lot of student housing, which would affect that average number, but a lot of those units are not in good condition.
Well, that's and the thing is, it's if you can find one, right? The vacancy rate is 3.4% in Ottawa. In other words, like 96% of the apartments in the city, they're spoken for. I mean, the big worries, where is the cost of living right now? Gosh, if it's not number one, what is it? Cole in Ottawa. Cole, you're on City News.
Hey, Rob, how are you?
I'm good, sir. Thank you.
No, I just wanted to touch base on inflation and everything like that. Like, I work for one of the school boards here in the city as a trades worker, so we operate and function all the buildings for all these kids to go to school.
Yeah.
And yet there's half of us that, we're in our 20s, 30s, and we're living at home with our parents, and your salaries go down instead up because all the new taxes from Trudeau, carbon taxes, eventually it has to end. They've got to do something.
You feel like you're falling behind, Cole?
Oh, it's impossible to get ahead. Like, I'm a single parent. I have a daughter, It's hard enough just to put like clothes on her, food on the table every day.
Yeah.
And I live at home with my parents, and I'm 28 years old.
Wow. Okay.
And like I'm paid from the province to operate these buildings, and my salary just goes down every year instead of up. So how does that match?
Well, how do you mean your salary goes down every year? What do you mean your salary goes down every year?
Taxes and everything that are created. They tax you on your salary, then you pay taxes on groceries, you pay taxes on...
Right. Yeah, you're not keeping up with the cost of living, in other words.
No, you tax you 5 times over on your salary. Like, what are people supposed to do?
Yeah. Okay, Cole, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks,
Yeah, no worries. Well, lots of worries. Big worries. Josh in Gloucester. Josh.
Hi, Rob.
Yeah, hi, Josh.
So just, I would, your list is my list, but number 1 and 2 would be, well, number 1 is inflation. Number 2 is the polarization of society.
Really? Okay.
I'm a mid-30s guy, so you're getting a lot of younger callers today because we are feeling the pain of this. Let me just say here, I'm not trying to gloat here, but my salary is 6 figures. It's a very good salary.
Good for you.
But I'm not that well off, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is, you're lucky getting a townhome with that. And I'm just old enough that we didn't have to deal with the housing pinch there.
You got in just before the crazy times.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But if you're late 20s, I'm seeing the people get into my job there. They're screwed. They're hopeless. It's very difficult. Very expensive. That being said, this carbon tax increase that's coming in April there, totally gutless, really not appreciated. And I also, since the cost of gas is going up the way it is, why do you need the carbon tax increase? Isn't the natural increase in the cost good enough?
Maybe the market is doing the work for you right now.
Exactly, right? That's the whole principle, right? The cost goes up, you demand less.
Yeah.
Doesn't make sense.
Do they really need another 3 or 4 cents?
Yeah, right.
Right? Is that going to make the difference between the world frying or not?
Yeah, exactly. And then for the polarization of society, I'd like to give an additional hypothesis to the guys that talked in the preamble. They said a lot of it was social media. I would just say, excuse me, as a society here, we actually are getting more and more polarized. I don't think it's social media. Well, social media plays a part, but it's just there is more and more people doing more and more different things, and their values in our society are more and more diverse,
Okay, okay.
And like here, I was born in the late 80s, and some of the things going on in society I feel alienated by. Don Cherry was my hero growing up. Now he's an outcast.
Right. Okay.
Anyway.
Like a loss of, tradition, right? So things like that, heritage, tradition, these sorts of things. I'm
not blaming it all on
No. But those are, when you're talking about tradition and heritage and these sorts of things, history, they evoke powerful emotions in people.
Yeah,
right?
but it's like even these radical leftists that they have now that I'm white privilege and all these things. I'm sorry, but I'm very alienated by it.
Okay. All right. Well, anyway. I'll just say a few words about polarization because I do want to hear from people on this. I thank you for your call, Josh. You make some interesting points. It's just, I put it on my list because I am increasingly worried about it. It's politics and it's always been partisan, and it can be hyper partisan at times. I just find now, more often than not, I'm hearing from people who sound unhinged. And uncompromising, whether it's on the left or on the right. There's no room for compromise with people anymore. They're so hardened now. I have seen how this has become so toxic in American politics, where the person on the side of a political debate does not have an opinion that the other person has and disagrees with. Now, the person on the other side is a bad person. They're your enemy. They're a flawed person. Gosh, this is on full display now. It's not I disagree with you. It's I hate you. You're my enemy. Not good. And the Prime Minister is not lily white on this. He is an active participant in it. He used to talk about vaccine mandates in a totally different way than he talks about them now. He used to call him divisive and unnecessary. We shouldn't be segregating people. But then for political reasons, he leveraged them. And you just take the comments from one of his own MPs, Joël Lightbound, the Quebec Liberal, who broke ranks on this, right? What you remember what he said during his news conference? He said it was deliberate. Vaccine policies became a deliberate wedge issue because it was politically advantageous to do so. And, truckers go from being heroes on the front lines, risking their lives, to being racist, misogynist, fringe minorities holding unacceptable views. All deliberate. Very divisive, toxic, and symptomatic of a world that is increasingly becoming just, black and white. You're either with us or you're with the terrorists. And, nobody is completely innocent, whether it's on the conservative side of the house. And Mad Max, I don't know what's going on with Mad Max. Like, he's on Twitter yesterday, and he's calling the Prime Minister a fascist, and he's calling Chrystia Freeland a Nazi, and, his tweets are getting thousands and thousands and thousands of likes. Social media, the echo chambers of social media, I think they're playing a big role in this because it's confirmation bias. It's very dangerous for the country. I'm very worried about it. Dave in Metcalfe. Dave.
Hey, how are you today?
I'm okay, Dave. I'm worried, Dave. I'm worried, actually.
Well,
but otherwise, okay. Yeah, we'll work it out in therapy. Don't worry about it.
Anything on this planet with a heartbeat should be worried.
Yeah, okay.
Anyhow, I heard
what are you worried about, Dave?
Well, I heard something interesting coming from an NHK contributor, Japanese news channel contributor. And his take on how to deal with Russia, as well as a bunch of other stuff, is to just drop the price of oil down to $10 a barrel.
Well, okay.
This would undoubtedly hurt Russia faster, deeper, and for longer than any other measure that anyone could possibly dream of.
Well,
because the price of natural gas is directly linked to the price of oil.
Yeah, and they've in the sanctions, the term I keep hearing on some of the American news channels is they've carved out energy right from the sanctions. And I guess that's because Western Europe is so reliant on the oil and the gas that Russia produces, right? To keep the lights on, to keep their economies running. So
well, that's exactly right.
Yeah. So, if you're in Germany right now and you're saying we have to become more energy resilient, but, you can't do that overnight. Like windmills is not going to save them, so.
Well, they were the world leader in windmills at one point in time. I don't know where in the hell they sit now.
Yeah, but
anyhow, and quite frankly, in terms of dealing with Putin, I don't know why the rest of Russia hasn't really dealt with him yet. I mean, they are experts at getting rid of their own.
Okay, yeah.
Honestly, I mean, really, the guy is not just a pariah. He's one of the most dangerous fascists that this planet has ever seen. I think he only rates 2 to Hitler.
Wow. Okay. All right, Dave. You're worried. It's I can hear it. Thank you. And I'm take another one here. Smith Falls. Don in Smith Falls. You're on City News, Don.
Yes. Good morning.
Hi, Don.
Hi.
What are you worried about, Don?
I'm worried about the cost of living, the inflation aspect of it. I'm a retired person, 70 years old.
Yep.
My gas bill, I have a $70 carbon tax on my usage of gas.
Natural gas, Don?
Yeah, $70 a month.
$70, wow.
Now, you multiply that by 5 months a year, because that's when you use it during the course of our year.
Yeah.
Usually 5 months a year. So that's
$350, yeah, right there.
Yeah. You multiply that by 1 million homes, that's $350 million, right?
Yeah.
Now, you multiply that by another 20 million for all of Canada, we're in the billions of dollars for this carbon tax, just on heating your homes. I haven't included farms. I haven't included business or office towers. So the government is taking in, I would say, close to $10 billion a year. Not talking about gas for your car, okay? What I'm looking at is they keep saying, get the green energy jobs, the green energy jobs. I can point out, as you well know, all the people who have lost their jobs in the oil industry and related industries to the oil industry. But tell me or point out to me, where are the jobs in the green energy? I haven't seen any advertisings for come work for us. We are a green energy company. I haven't seen any of those applications or requests for employment.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah. I'd have to look it up. How much revenue do they bring in their carbon tax? Now, remember, based on different income thresholds and where you live,
we're still in the billions.
There's still rebates, right? They do rebates, right?
Yeah, we're still
and
in
the government claims, not Rob Snow claims, the government claims you actually get back more in rebate than you pay in carbon tax. Their claim, not mine, Don. Their claim, not mine.
It's what do you call it? The shell game.
Shell game, yeah.
Yeah, that's all it is.
I don't know how much rebate you get on your carbon tax. $300, yeah?
Yeah.
But you said you're paying $70 a month on your gas, right?
What about my car, my vehicle?
Yeah, and your car and all the carbon tax that you don't see.
And then I go to the store where they're paying extra carbon tax to heat their store, so they pass it on to us.
Like if you get $300 back at tax time, but you're paying $350 just on your natural gas bill, then you're not coming out further ahead.
No, and then never mind the vehicles for regular gas,
Yeah,
I'm just saying, that's the inflation part, and I don't understand, where are the jobs? Where are the green jobs? I haven't seen one company
the green jobs?
Looking for employers or employees.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Don.
You're welcome.
Yeah, be right back. Rob Snow Show, City News.
I always knew I was going to own my own business, and I've always wanted to have a store. And I sort of figured when the right concept came together at the right time, I would move forward with that plan. And so through doing some environmental initiatives in the restaurant group that I was with prior to opening this store, it just triggered my path towards being more environmentally conscientious and wanting to make more of a difference, and hopefully encouraging, inspiring other people to want to do the same, at which point the idea for All Eco was born. I have some really fun products. I have a really wide spectrum of products. So the things we look for in terms of qualifying products are sustainably made, upcycled, recycled, zero waste, all natural, no harmful chemicals to the environment or to our bodies. We have fun stuff, so really clean burning candles, lots of really natural body care and skin care. I put a real emphasis on Canadian products. I really try to support up and comers, and I always source Canada first. The refill bar is really important to me. It's really huge. I think that's been exciting as well, because I thought it was going to be a real process in convincing people that this is a better way to go. And actually it was just right away there was a built-in affinity towards doing refill, which has been great. We closed, I think, probably we were closed down by before the second week of March. Just didn't feel we could comfortably or confidently stay open, even though I do sell essential products, in terms of the cleaning. But we just didn't feel we could make a safe space for ourselves or our customers at that time, and especially with the information we had at the time. So we did close our doors, at which point I did not have a website, because that was I hadn't even scheduled myself to have a website at that point. So that was sort of full speed moving towards that and trying to drive the business, at the same time still get myself on the map, because I was so new. So during that time, as we were building the website, we were still doing a lot of video shopping and private shopping, online shopping, online phone, text. Any way I could do business, I was doing it. And there was really a nice show of support for my business during that time, which was really, really encouraging. And now, we are fully set up online too.
It's time to talk back.
On the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
Oh, so there's a review underway. This is another story that we'll be watching here at City News for Tamara Leach, one of the convoy organizers. We're following that via Twitter. Apparently, it's been just because this is all virtual. Bail court is virtual. It's a total gong show, this Zoom bail hearing that they're having right now. They kind of left it wide open, and anybody who could log on wanted to log on, and it's become kind of a free Tamara Leach Zoom bail hearing. Hundreds of people are on it. So that's something else to watch. The big worry list. What's your big worry? Cost of living, war, take your pick, pandemic, political polarization, climate change, whatever it is. We'll talk about it here. Bill Packenham. Bill, you're on City News.
Hi, Rob.
Hi, Bill.
So as a farmer, one of the big issues that worries me is these environmental issues. And they seem to be at the root of a lot of the problems that are influencing government policy. So, I mean, what's good for an urban setting generally beats me up out here in the rural. What's good for one part of the country is not good for another. I mean, we've basically blockaded Alberta oil, which forces us to get 85% of our oil out of the United States, which this country should be the one that's exporting, not importing. I got fuel the other day, and because we have multiple applications, so we burn 3 different kinds of fuel products here, and agriculture is a huge consumer of fuels.
Yep.
So I got regular gas the other day, and the bulk price was 94 cents a liter. Unfortunately, I paid $111.99 excise tax, $164.63 provincial tax, and then they culminated on top, tax on tax, put another $173.25 of tax on top of that. So basically almost $455 of tax on top of the actual price of the fuel itself. So if people are wondering, like, how are we going to get the cost of fuel down? Stop putting taxes on it. I mean...
Right. And stop raising taxes.
Well, stop raising taxes. I mean, these carbon taxes that they're putting on for transportation, I mean, we have trucks on the road as well. That is exponentially, like 10 times more by the time the consumer gets it. The cost of transportation on everything. I mean, I mentioned to you last week, and you brought it up again, the cost of the rise of soybeans and corn, wheat, oats, how much that has risen.
Yeah.
I mean,
nobody's paying any attention to that.
No.
The oil is getting all the story, but all of these basic foodstuffs are all commodities, all traded on world markets in U.S. dollars. Yeah. And man, oh man, they've been on a tear, just a rip-roaring tear. It's unbelievable.
Well, like I said before, I mean, you're going to go to the grocery store, and you're just not going to be able to haul enough money with you to buy the groceries. Yeah. I mean, in my opinion right now, I mean, these environmental issues are driving policies by government that's too hard in one way. I mean, even with Germany now, they're having to rethink whether they can close all their nuclear power generators because they're relying on Russian oil. In my opinion, I mean, right now in North America, we have the wrong leaders at the wrong time.
Okay. Thank you, Bill. Thank you, sir. Okay. Drudge had a headline this morning, $10 toothpaste. But when you click on the story, it's about the CEO of Colgate, and it's like their high-end toothpaste. Like I think it's called Pearl, is the high-end toothpaste. And they say it's going to be $10 a tube.
Is it organic? What is high-end
I'm going to get the Crest, like the Giant Tiger, whatever the cheapest Crest toothpaste is.
Toothpaste is toothpaste.
Right. You know.
$10 toothpaste.
$10 toothpaste, yeah. Right.
That
it's a luxury product.
For the people who buy premium gas, now $10 toothpaste. There you go.
Yeah. Gordon in Bell's Corners. Yes, sir.
Hello, sir. How are you doing, sir?
I'm good. Thank you. Yep.
In terms of my concerns, I think cost of living has to be at the top.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I don't know who said it, but inflation is the tax on the poor. And that is, the people can barely afford things. All the groceries and everything, gas goes up. That's, I think, the biggest concern. It's not just the gas prices. I think our debt levels, how much we've gone into debt, doesn't help things either.
Mm-hmm.
in terms of devaluating the Canadian dollar. The second one, I guess, for me would be, and I'm on with you, this polarization.
Yeah.
I think social media is at the crux of it. I don't think it's the only cause, but with social media, you get the most extreme left and right views thrown in your face. And I'm an engineer by education. I'm very logical. I'm very fact-based. But after 10 minutes on Twitter, like I'm yelling at my screen.
Yeah.
It just brings out your emotions, because you're looking at people going, how can you be so stupid? And it's like
the secret sauce is anger.
Yes, exactly. And that is, I think, we need to do something to stop that, because I think it's just riling people up. I don't think, and this is not a comment on you, so don't react. But journalism and most of the legacy news is not helping, because they're only giving opinions, not letting me.
Too much opinion, not enough news.
Right. I would like to make my own decisions. Just tell me both sides and let me decide.
Sure. Fair enough.
And I think with the social media, I could be wrong, but I almost think the politicians are listening to these tools. Like, I think they're,
well, if you want to be a successful politician, you kind of have to master the tool, right?
Well, that just makes the politicians become
like if you're running for, the leadership of a party, or you're in a general election, are you buying, a full-page ad in the daily newspaper of whatever city?
True.
Or are you bombarding people with, little hits on social media, right?
But imagine a politician who looks at Twitter and goes, oh, that's the opinion that I should be leaning towards, when he or she is just seeing the extreme left or extreme right.
Right. Okay.
It makes the politicians polarized.
Okay. Thank you, Gordon. Yeah, great points. And last call of a very interesting hour. On the Gatineau side, Diego.
Good morning, Rob.
Good morning, Diego.
How's it going?
It goes. It's getting more
know.
expensive by the hour, but yeah.
Thank you for your time. I want only put two other topics that I think there is important thing.
Yep.
One, manipulation and corruption. Manipulation, because we need to balance the information that we receive. In Canada, we listen only the NATO perspective, but I think we need to balance the manipulation of the information. We need to know what happened in 2014 and the Maidan, and the corruption that I talk about is the government corruption. Trudeau sold the country to Pfizer, and he's a traitor. No, it's not a...
sold the country to Pfizer.
Conspiracy.
What does that mean? Does that mean, like, when I do my taxes, I usually send my tax reform to Shawinigan. There's a big, like, CRA thing, a place in Shawinigan. I don't send my taxes there anymore? I send them to the Pfizer headquarters now? Is that what I do? Because, David, can you Google the headquarters for the Canada Revenue Agency and see if it corresponds with the headquarters of the Canada Revenue Agency? I just want us to do a quick fact check on that.
No, I can confirm those are two different buildings.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
We'll be right back after the 11 o'clock news with the latest on the price of gas. This is City News.
This is City News.
CIWW 1310 AM in Ottawa.
And CJET 1011 FM in Smiths Falls and the Valley. Number 1 for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 1011 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Wednesday, March 2nd. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, minus 8 degrees. It's minus 6 in Smiths Falls. And here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. More civilians taking up arms in Ukraine against the Russian invasion. Ukraine reporting about 2,000 civilians have so far been killed in the shelling and bombing. But the country also says the price is high for Russia. They are counting about 6,000 troop deaths from the Russian side so far, and that does not include any battle from last night. City News reporter Irene Preklet now with the latest from Ukraine.
Ukrainian officials say more than 2,000 civilians have been killed so far, including children. Russia stepping up its attacks on large cities, including the second largest in Ukraine, Kharkiv. Schools, hospitals, all coming under attack. But Ukrainians are not giving up without a fight. Olga lives in central Ukraine with 2 of her 3 sons fighting with the resistance.
And it is frightening also to know that my little grandson, who is only a year and a half, has to be taken to the underground parking lot very often and spend nights there in the car because it is very dangerous to stay at home.
Almost 900,000 people have left Ukraine in the past week, and the UN Refugee Agency is warning that number could pass the 1 million mark very soon. There are reports of another meeting today between both sides. So far, no details or confirmation of that happening. Irene Preklet, City News.
Mayor Jim Watson, along with Councillor Matthew Fleury and the Charge d'Affaires at the Ukrainian Embassy, unveiled new street signs in front of the Russian Embassy this morning. The trio showed off Free Ukraine signs on Charlotte at Laurier. Watson tweets the street signs are going up to denounce Russia's actions and to stand with the people of Ukraine. The Ottawa Senators will include the Ukrainian national anthem now, along with the Canadian and the American, for the rest of the home games this season. Also, the 50-50 draw conducted by the Senators Community Foundation will donate some of that money raised to organizations that help out with humanitarian efforts. Melnick says the Canadian Tire Centre will be used as a drop-off point for donations. The team owner says this would range from medical supplies to clothing and other items needed for the people of Ukraine. Melnick ends the open letter with confidence the efforts combined with others around the world will make a significant difference in the lives of Ukrainian people. City News Time 11:03, and now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
We'll get a little break from the snow with some clearing before we get back into the flurries around 3 this afternoon. Steady snow for the late afternoon into the evening. Could collect a couple of centimeters. The high -2, -15 for the low. It'll feel like -25 overnight. For Thursday, sun and cloud, colder. The high just -12. For today, the high -2.
And right now it's -80 in Ottawa, -6 in Smiths Falls. The Bank of Canada has raised the key interest rate to 0.5%. The central bank is trying to fight inflation by hiking interest rates. The inflation rate has risen to its highest level in Canada since 1991. City News Time 11:04. Canada's largest union in the federal public sector is calling for a national inquiry into the Phoenix pay system. Now, it's been 6 years since it was launched, but the issues continue. There's still a backlog of 141,000 files. Union President Chris Aylward tells City News it's time.
It's just a complete mess, a complete fiasco, and it's become a national disgrace, really. And that's why we're asking now, basically saying it's time for a national inquiry, a public inquiry into this Phoenix system, and to get to the bottom of it, because people have to be held accountable.
Now, he believes the federal government needs to hire more compensation advisors, but also make any damages for compensation non-taxable. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
He's the opinionated Ottawa icon.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
1011 FM and 1310 AM.
It's winter time and the weather's fine. The snow on the woods and field when I reveal.
snowmobile. Thrill by gully and hill, baby, it'll make you feel like an outdoor meal on a snowmobile. Listen to the sound of the bells go round when the winter carnival's here, and oh, what fun at the crack of the gun when the whole gang disappears. The race is on from the bush to the pond and back where the judges feel you've won their seal. For the snowmobile, you've won their seal. For the snowmobile.
All right, time for Valley View. Bruce McIntyre is here from the Eganville Leader, Brantford County's largest paid circulation newspaper, independently owned since 1902. Bruce has started working there in 1903. But, how are you this week?
I am well.
Good. I was up your way the other day, actually, on the weekend. So
thanks for dropping in.
Yeah, drove through Renfrew. I got on, what is that highway? 41 that takes you through Lennox, Addington, that eventually...
Yes, you go down 132, it hits into Highway 41.
132, and eventually, we hooked up with Highway 7. We were on our way to Peterborough, so pick up a little puppy dog. So.
Oh, you did? Well,
yeah, we got new puppy. So, yeah, very cute. Not sleeping much right now. But
hide your shoes, hide everything.
Yeah, I got to hide everything, puppy-proof the house. But, my gosh, on the way back, I'm not familiar with that highway at all. So, but on the way, whiteout conditions, just brutal. But
when you're coming up, that's why when you go through Caladar. That's the snowmobile capital of the area.
Oh man, lots of snowmobiles. Yeah, insane number of snowmobiles. Yeah. Very, very popular, and a lot of. Especially up that way when you're going through, like Lennox Addington is that's part of Randy Hillier's riding up that way, right? So a lot of Trudeau signs and stuff in the yard. So anyway, it's just it's interesting anyway. But
I remember when I first moved up here, I took Highway 41 moving to Renfrew. I saw all these signs: back off government.
Back off government. Yeah, that was the landowner. That was the landowner stuff. Yeah, that was the landowner stuff. Yeah. Are you up the line right now, or are you in town?
I am down the line in the nation's capital. I'm in Ottawa.
Right. Okay. Nevertheless, I was just wondering if anybody has been to Pickwagonagon to get gas. I'm just wondering what they would be selling gas for there, because
$1.37 or $1.37.8 at one station. The others were $1.38.8.
Okay. All right.
It's still a that's scary. That's a good price. We're laughing. That's a great price. That's horrible.
That's the cheap gas,
No, it's good. It's good stuff. It's instant. It's good quality gas.
No. But I mean, that's the cheap gas now is $1.38. Yeah. The $1.38 is a cheap gas now.
Yeah. That's frightening.
So the paper's out today.
Yes.
It's a weekly. It's out every Wednesday. $2. Best $2. Tax included. What's the big story?
Oh, we have many. I think if you're from the local area, Bonaire Valley, our editorial, they kind of gave them a little slap on the wrist. As your listeners may recall, one of the councillors took part in the actual convoy, which is fine. He didn't stay the 3 weeks. He went for a couple of days and left, came back. But they wrote a letter to the Prime Minister a couple of weeks ago, not suggesting strongly that they stop moving the goalposts when it comes to COVID, to stop making changes all the time and stop dividing Canadians. And so our editorial was basically saying, you know what, the PM's never going to see that letter. It's never going to. He's worrying more about Russia and Ukraine and inflation than worry about what Bonaire Valley thinks. And besides, it's mainly provincial that brings down the mandates, and the federal does the mandates. And Bonaire Valley, you're municipal. Why don't you concentrate on municipal issues? Lowering your taxes, fixing the roads, and leave the other stuff.
Right.
Other level of fill. They got to risk that. There's been a lot of backlash against the council for just being so adamant about the COVID rules and the mandate, and they're one of the very few that did not bring in the vaccine mandate for their staff. So one of the very few in Renfrew County, and it's fine that there were no repercussions from that, but it's time to get back to municipal politics, and we're not worried about that stuff right now because our acting director of health, Dr. Cushman, will decide what's going to happen, not Bonaire Valley Council. So it's interesting. So hopefully they'll get back on track and worry about the budget and the big things that they got elected to do.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So, the reopening day was yesterday, March 1st, right? That was yesterday. With the easing of most restrictions, you don't have to show the vaccine passport at businesses. Businesses can still ask for it if they want to. We'll see how popular that is. But nevertheless, Dr. Robert Cushman, is the Chief Medical Officer of Health for the Renfrew County Health District. What's his reaction to this easing of restrictions? When I interviewed Dr. Etches here in Ottawa yesterday, she was kind of cautious about it all, like, don't go wild and crazy.
He's exactly the same way, especially up here. We have St. Paddy's Day coming up, and we have not had St. Paddy's Day for 2 years. So that is like taking away the Stanley Cup from this winning team for 2 years in a row. So it is going to be hog wild up here. We take St. Paddy's Day. That's a national holiday in the Ottawa Valley, and that's one of the concerns. And we've had 33 deaths, which for us is a lot. I know two that have died personally myself of COVID, and he just said, just take it easy. Don't go totally off the rails and celebrating, because this variant, it could just show up again the flick of an eye. So just be careful and be cautious and wash your hands and wear your mask and social distance. And he just wants. I feel bad for the directors of health. Yes, sometimes they appear to be overstepping their boundaries, but they're doing it they're not doing it because they want to be power hungry. They're doing it to try and save lives. That's what it comes down to.
They're doing the doctor's natural inclination, I guess. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Do no harm. Right. So that's interesting because, we've interviewed, we had Dr. Etches on yesterday. I know our newsroom spoke with Dr. Paul Remiliotis, who's the Eastern Ontario Health Unit, that like Hawkesbury, Cornwall, those areas, right? And Dr. Cushman for Renfrew County. So that's a big part of Eastern Ontario, and they're all kind of singing from the same hymn book there. So
and up here in the county, as he said, we lag about 2 to 3 weeks behind the rest of Ontario when it comes to outbreaks or conditions. So just be cautious. Just be cautious. That's his word. Cautious, as you say, cautious is the word for these people.
All right.
So and we have nice good news. One of our volunteers got the coveted June Callwood Award. It's only 15 people a year get it all across the province. And Jamie Sarrazin was this year's recipient, and she's been a long-time volunteer at the Cooperating On. She's helped organize the powwows. She runs the cultural center. Just a wonderful woman. And she was the one, along with a couple other ladies, that really kickstarted the powwow about 25 years ago. They really got it going.
Okay.
And she's one of the founders. She stepped back a bit, and she's still chair of the committee, but she put a lot of countless hours into that. So I'm glad to see that she was recognized for all her volunteer work. It's a wonderful award for her, and it's a very coveted award as well. When you get that, you've done something correct.
Yeah.
So we're happy for her.
So in the Eganville Leader, and Bruce sometimes will contribute to ottawa.citynews.ca, and this one appeared at ottawa.citynews.ca as well as in this week's Eganville Leader, people suffering from addictions. And we talked recently about the lack of treatment facilities and the lack of homeless shelters, whatever, in Renfrew County, and with the limits on social gatherings, people who would opt for AA, NA, those have been difficult to come by. So tell us what's been going on there, Bruce.
It's a wonderful program. Patrick John Mills, I want to thank the City of Ottawa for kicking Patrick out. He got tired of bureaucracy around here, so he moved to Renfrew.
Okay.
And he opened up an independent art gallery, and it's just what he's done is amazing. But a friend of his, William March, is a addict, narcotics. He was into it very heavily, and when the COVID came down, they couldn't meet. I mean, the NA meetings were gone, AA meetings were gone, because of regulations and social distancing.
Yeah.
So he talked to Patrick about this. I said, well, just use the second floor of my studio, go on up there. And they went up. He said, hey, why don't you guys paint while you're around here? And William studied art in university many years ago, and he picked up the paintbrush and just forgot how much he loved it. And it's a way to let your emotions, you can paint through your emotions. So they have bi-weekly meetings up there, and people sometimes are very tentative to come to the meeting because they're not sure what to expect. They have a little meet and greet. They talk about their issues, and they go to an easel, and they'll start painting. And they can talk and paint, or just be quiet and paint, and it's just really taken off. Patrick and William were hoping for maybe maximum 10 people. to take part in this, and they have a waiting list now. Literally, they have a waiting list for people that want to get into this because it's the self-help. As William said, when you have surgery, you go for physiotherapy. You're always trying to improve your health. With Narcotics Anonymous, once you kick the habit, you have to keep going for support groups to get that, the support. That's a very big part of fighting your addictions. And he said it's like a hell on earth. And to be able to paint and to bring other people into the group, so far in his group, he's been going since October. Nobody has regressed. They're all still staying clean. And he credits Patrick that Patrick donates top of the line A1 quality painting supplies. Like, this is hundreds of dollars he'll supply every week for this. And he's gone out and got sponsors for it. And this could really be a model for other communities if they have this type of location to use, to just go in. It's completely private, completely anonymous, and they go in, they talk, they paint, they laugh. And that's what William said. The one thing they forget about when you're addicted, you forget about how to have fun, simple things. And going back to painting is just, we're talking about how to laugh again, how to have fun, because when you stop drinking or doing your drugs, you don't know what to do with yourself. You don't. What do I do now? Like, you're lost. So this picks up that gap, and it's a very good program. And it's as I said to William, you may have something here. You can maybe franchise this out. I don't know, but it's really taken off. And the people who are in the course, I spent an afternoon with them and got to talk to them, and they just said this is the best thing that could have happened for them. When they go back to their NA meetings and their AA meetings, regular meetings, they said it's going to be kind of boring. It's going to be okay. We'll still go to help and support each other, but they're going to continue with the painting classes and therapy that way. But yeah, it's really, really well done. And if anyone is listening and is curious in the area that wants to find out more, just go to the Art Factory and they'll give you information on that. And it's just an incredible, I don't want to say out of the box, but it's something completely different to help with recovering addicts. And kudos to both of them.
Yeah,
it's really well done.
Well, you got a lot of interesting want ads in the Eganville Leader. I'll tell you what, a lot of good jobs, I don't know this company, Roseburg. Family-owned, vertically integrated forest products company.
Plywood.
Okay.
Yep.
Plywood, okay. Looking for an electrical supervisor. Must have bachelor's degree in electrical engineering or Red Seal industrial electrician, 8 to 10 years of industrial electrical experience. 3 to 5 years supervisory experience. So that'd be a good job. That'd probably do well by that. And then you have something called the Renfrew County Community Futures Development Corporation.
That is a subdivision of federal, regional. They pump money in. Their times have this as well. They pump money into economic development. We have that here, and they'll sponsor businesses, students. They can get up to $250,000 loan with no interest for their businesses if they qualify. It's just really help entrepreneurs.
It says, grassroots approach to create local solutions and invest in local entrepreneurs. And it is looking for an executive director.
Yes, Diana McKinnon finally retired. She's off to the pastures.
Advanced degree in business or finance, 5-year senior leadership. Salary range $80,000 to $115,000 a year.
Oh, I should take a look at that.
$80,000 to $115,000. And St. Francis Memorial Hospital in Barry's Bay. Temporary full-time RN, temporary full-time RN, temporary full-time RN, temporary full-time RN. I guess they need some RNs up there.
Well, the problem is there's only so many full-time positions available, and if you're you don't want to just work for part-time or temporary, you want something full-time, and it's hard to recruit. Very difficult.
Okay. And Renfrew County seeks media relations and social media coordinator.
That's my old job. I'm not going down that road.
That is your old job. Starting salary $57,000 to $66,000 a year for the county of Renfrew. Okay. All right. Okay.
And
can we put you down as a reference for that, or
you bet you sure can. Now, I think a breath of fresh air is the Pembroke Mayor, Mike LeMay, is not running for a third term. And when he came in, he said, "You can't get it done in 2 terms." Well, you really didn't get anything done, did you? That's kind of joking aside, but he said, "You know what? There's no need for a third term. I've done what I can do, and I'll pass the torch." And I wish more did that.
Oh, here's one for you, Bruce. Full-time administrator, County of Renfrew, full-time administrator.
That's for our long-term care homes, yes.
Starting salary, $120,000 a year.
But you're also responsible for 2 long-term care homes, and employees have about 400 employees under your wing.
Okay.
So
right.
it's
big job. Big job. Yep. Okay. Out of my skill set, Bruce. But look, you're at the top of your game this week. Great to hear from you.
You too.
All
Enjoy
the best.
Weekend.
Yep,
and
you too.
What's the dog's name?
Monty.
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 Very good.
Yep. Monty. Pictures to follow. We'll send them to you. Yeah. Odd Papa
Thank
here.
you.
Thanks. Bruce McIntyre, Eganville leader, Valley Views, Rob Snow Show, City News.
To opening a business especially in a pandemic, in that kind of situation, is very challenging. First, people don't know me. People don't know my product. To build a new clientele, to build a trust for them, to show them that I care about it. I do love my food. That was the biggest challenge. And of course, in all lockdown, where I had to face it regards my employee, girls, ladies, what they work for me, I didn't want to tell them, sorry, I'm closed, I'm not having a job for you. No, they have families, they have kids to feed. So this is very important because we are family orientated. And we decided to open. We, of course, essential business. So been very tough, very, very tough, as we didn't see people on the road. Market was completely quiet, but we knew that we have to wait, and we knew that we're gonna be fine. In this town, we built online shop, Vedel Online, and we did Uber Eats, which one is picking up and is very, very popular. We have a really good feedback. So this is the song from my heart. And and we try to expand. I'm thinking about opening another location. So I want to make Vedel famous. I want to make the Vedel place to be for all the families with kids. Try the traditional food, what the grandparents cooked in the countries when they're from, or even Canadian people. They're more than welcome to come and try our famous pierogis. I try to be passionate about my food, organic food, made with love, with all homemade, organic. So you can find food from all over the Europe: Polish, German, Ukrainian, Romanian, French, Armenian. So all kind of different types of food. Homemade lunches. We focus on the homemade lunches, grandma style. I keep always saying, like in my Genia Babcia house, how she cooked. I wanted this love and this food over here because I believe that will bring all people around me. And all the organic cold cuts, lovely selection of sausages, cheeses, European cheeses, great selections of mustards, French cookies. All what you need from Europe you can find here at the Vedel Touch of Europe. If you think good way, that's it. You have to. I had the option to cry in the corner and say, oh, pandemic is coming. No, you need to stand up and fight for it and have your eyes open, think outside of the box and do it.
A message from the
Strong voice.
Strong opinions.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Already close to 1 million people have fled Ukraine into neighboring countries. Could Canada be a possible destination? John Murray is with me now. He's president and CEO of the College of Immigration and Citizenship Consultants. Good morning.
Good morning, Rob.
There is a large diaspora here, if you will, of Ukrainian Canadians, 1.4 million Canadians of Ukrainian descent here. So how likely is it that there could be opportunities for people fleeing the crisis in Ukraine to settle here in Canada, Mr. Murray?
I think it's very likely, Rob. Canada on the global stage is seen as a country that's both attractive and welcoming to refugees. So it's quite likely that the current conflict in Ukraine will generate refugees, and many of them will want to come to Canada, particularly in light of the current Ukraine diaspora that exists in Canada. We also know that our federal government anticipates that there will be refugees generated by the conflict, and they've already put in place several steps to prepare for the expected refugees. These steps include beefing up our consular services in Warsaw, Bucharest, Vienna, and London, principally to deal with the influx of refugee applications. They are prioritizing applications already in the Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Department inventory, and they've established a dedicated service channel for Ukrainians who wish to apply either through telephone or web phone.
Okay. What are some of the challenges? What are some of the challenges going to be? The citizenship refugee process can be very time-consuming at the best of times. These are not the best of times. Just before this, the government was having a terrible time trying to resettle Afghan refugees, for example. Now this. So what are some of the challenges right now?
You're quite right, Rob. Refugees face many of the same challenges as other immigrants. Finding jobs, finding places to live, and learning a new language and culture. But refugees in particular also have additional challenges. Unlike other immigrants, they may not have had time to prepare for a new life elsewhere. Mm-hmm. They may be without access to financial resources or missing important documents and other information necessary to support their refugee claims. And when the home country is in conflict, it may be very, very difficult for them to get access to this information.
Okay. We hear so often about fraud in the refugee immigration system. People preying on people who are in this circumstance right now. There have been stories about fraudulent citizenship consultants. What's being done to monitor that, and how can people avoid that?
Those are very good questions, Rob. The College of Immigration and Citizenship Consultants is the licensing and oversight body for Canada's immigration and citizenship consultants and international student advisors. We have a program of education and examination to ensure that licensed consultants are properly trained to provide the services that they offer to both immigrants and refugees. And we maintain a well-resourced professional discipline program to ensure that any deviations from our strict code of professional conduct are dealt with as quickly as possible.
Okay. So there's a designation then?
Yes, the designation is RCIC or
RCIC. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
Regulated Canadian Immigration Consultant.
Okay.
And so we, as part of our Fraud Prevention Month activities, we're promoting the existence of that designation and the need for prospective immigrants, whether they are refugees or attempting to enter Canada through one of the many federal or provincial government streams, ensure that those individuals use a licensed consultant who they can confirm by consulting our public register on our website.
Okay, okay.
And especially do not use an unlicensed consultant.
Okay. That's very good, very useful information. I thank you for your time, Mr. Murray. Hope we can follow up with you.
Thank you, Robert.
Thanks again. Yeah. John Murray, President, CEO, College of Immigration Citizenship Consultants. That's going to be something to watch. When we come back, the Bank of Canada, for the first time since 2018, the Bank of Canada raised interest rates today. We will talk about it with Doug Porter. He is the chief economist at the Bank of Montreal. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
Number one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Wednesday, March 2nd. Good morning, I'm Danielle Bain. Right now in Ottawa, it's -7, mostly cloudy, and in Smiths Falls, -4. Here's what's making news this hour. As the Russian invasion into Ukraine continues, Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland says more measures are coming. She'll be holding a press conference later today along with the defense and immigration ministers. Even as the Bank of Canada raised interest rates to 0.5% to fight inflation, the price for everything is going to get even more expensive. Gas prices are reaching record highs. The price at the pumps around Ottawa tomorrow is expected to skyrocket to a new all-time record high around $1.67 per liter. And Ottawa Senators owner Eugene Melnyk announced various ways the Senators organization is trying to support those in Ukraine. The team will honor Ukraine by including the country's national anthem along with the Canadian and American anthems at remaining home games this season. Melnyk, who was born and raised in Canada but whose parents are from Ukraine, added that the Senators would be using upcoming 50-50 draws to donate to organizations providing humanitarian and medical assistance to Ukraine. The Senators will also work with the local Ukrainian community in Ottawa to find ways of using the Canadian Tire Centre as a drop-off point to collect donations of clothing, medical supplies, and other items for those in need. City News Time, 11:33. I'm Danielle Bain, and for news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
The world is changing.
So keep up with Rob.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It did it. The Bank of Canada raised interest rates. It's a 25 basis point move, and let's get reaction to it from Doug Porter. He is the chief economist at BMO Capital Markets. Thank you so much for taking the time for us this morning, Doug.
Oh, good morning, Rob.
What's your reaction to the move?
Well, it's interesting that the markets basically had next to no immediate reaction or response to to the decision. I think, basically the Bank of Canada did not want to surprise anyone today. They didn't want to add to the drama, so they played it very close to the book. Basically, hiked rates by a quarter, which is what the market almost entirely expected. I guess the one question mark out there was whether they would actually start trying to reduce the size of their balance sheet. In other words, start actually beginning to reverse some of the buildup of all those bonds that they've bought over the last couple of years. And the answer is no, not just yet. They're not reducing the balance sheet. So I wouldn't say this was a really aggressive rate hike. Some thought they'd really try to soften the message. I didn't get that impression either. They sound very concerned about inflation. So I think this, for all intents and purposes, it was right down the middle of the plate. They're, like I said, the Canadian dollar has basically not reacted. Short-term interest rates really haven't moved much beyond that 25 basis point hike. So okay. I think it was job well done. Very, very little response.
Was the Bank of Canada wrong on inflation? Did it get inflation wrong?
Well, they and just about everybody else.
Okay.
In the last year, in fairness, when you look at, say, the consensus of forecasters in almost all central banks, most everyone a year ago thought inflation would average about 2% over the coming 12 months. And, here we are with 5% inflation in Canada, almost 6% in Europe, and over 7% in the U.S. I mean, a big part of that is oil prices, but of course that's not the only story. A lot of things have gone wrong on the inflation front. But yes, I think it's fair to say that the bank and many others got inflation wrong in the past year.
Okay. This is what the bank says in its statement, because it's not so much about what it does, because this move was, as you say, well telegraphed. It's where are we going now, right? So it says CPI inflation is currently 5.1%, as expected in January, remains well above the bank's target range. Price increases have become more pervasive, and measures of core inflation have all risen. How do you interpret language like that?
So what they're saying is this is much more than just energy and food prices. Certainly those are two of the biggest drivers.
Yeah.
But essentially what they're saying is they're concerned that this is fanning out into many other areas, and I think we all know that from our day-to-day lives, that clearly the price of many items are going up at this point, whether it's furniture or appliances or cars, and certainly houses. We can all see it with our own two eyes. And essentially they're flagging that they're concerned that inflation is going to hang around a bit longer, and even if oil prices were to back off, and of course we're worried about just the opposite at this point. Yeah. But even if energy prices were to back off, I think what they're saying is that's not going to be enough.
Okay. It says the bank, quoting here, the bank will use its monetary policy tools to return inflation to the 2% target and keep inflation expectations well anchored. So here's one move. How many more will there be this year? What's your forecast?
So we've been saying 5 rate hikes this year for 1.25%. Admittingly, that forecast was before Russia invaded Ukraine. What we've seen in the past week is financial markets have started to slightly trim how much they think the Bank of Canada and the Federal Reserve will raise interest rates this year. But the markets were above what we were looking for, so we're essentially in sync with what the conventional wisdom is out there at this point. I think the risk, if we're going to be surprised, it's that ultimately the bank will feel inclined to do a little bit less than that over the next year. Unfortunately, the Russian invasion really complicates things because it both lifts inflation pressures and it reduces growth, or at least puts downside risks on growth. And that's a tough environment for central banks to be making policy. There are no easy decisions here, but I think in that kind of world, like I said, you don't want to do any damage. You don't want to surprise a lot, but I think they almost have to grind interest rates up somewhat.
Even if it means some economic weakness.
Yes, because inflation is so pervasive, to use their word, and serious at this point. They really have little choice.
Okay. What is quantitative tightening? What does that mean?
That means actually reducing the size of their balance sheet. So when they were buying bonds 2 years ago, buying all kinds of Government of Canada bonds, that's quantitative easing. That's a secondary tool that they have to try to hold down long-term interest rates. To reinforce now that they're starting to raise interest rates, what they would do is sell back some of those bonds or reduce their holdings of bonds, and that can actually put a bit of further upward pressure on long-term interest rates. They chose not to do that just yet. They think that these interest rate or this interest rate hike by itself is a good solid first step, and I think they're holding back before they start doing so-called quantitative tightening.
Okay. Stagflation, stagnant economic growth, stronger than normal inflation. Are we headed into that? What do you think? What's your opinion?
Well, a few months ago, I was poo-pooing that kind of talk, saying it was overwrought and overdone. But given what's happened in Ukraine and the fact that we've had oil prices blast up to $110 at one point this morning, it is an oil shock that can do that sort of thing to a global economy. The risks of stagflation have risen as a result of the oil shock that we could be staring down the barrel of at this point.
Well, you're full of great news this morning. Okay.
If there's any good news, the markets are actually improving today.
Yes, they are. They are. But
there's a bit of optimism.
I want to ask you about this. What is BMO Capital Markets thinking on this? The oil price is up. I mean, it's been volatile today. As you say, it's been as high as 112. Now it's 106. But it's way higher than it was a month ago. Mm-hmm. The Canadian dollar is not. The oil price is up somewhere between 25 and 30%, and the Canadian dollar has barely budged. Why is that? Usually, that used to be there used to be a real symbiotic relationship there. If the oil price went up, the dollar went up. It's not happening now. Why is that, do you think?
And that's definitely one of the interesting wrinkles to this year's market developments. You're right. The Canadian dollar and the oil used to be like a dog on a leash, and instead we're seeing the Canadian dollar basically not responding at all to oil prices. I think there's a couple factors. One is a lengthy answer. I'll try to give it in one sentence, and that's essentially, the world has changed somewhat for Alberta oil in particular, but oil in general. We're just not seeing the kind of new investment that you might expect to see when oil prices go up. A lot of that's got to do with ESG pressures and the lack of pipeline access out of Alberta. So really, we don't benefit, or the Alberta economy doesn't benefit as much directly from oil. The other big story is the U.S. now produces a lot more oil than they did 5 or even 10 years ago. So the difference between Canada and the U.S. in terms of how much we benefit relative to the U.S. from higher oil prices, that calculation has changed. It's no longer clear cut that the U.S. is a net loser from higher oil prices. Now, who we do benefit against, no question, is Europe. And you are starting to see the Canadian dollar really strengthen against the euro since the start of the year. I mean, part of that's because of concerns over Russia, but some of it also is because of higher oil prices. So I do think that more broadly, even if we're not gaining against the U.S. dollar, we will gain against many other currencies as long as oil prices stay up at these kind of levels.
Okay. So the Canada and our allies have imposed these severe economic penalties on Russia. Could Russia retaliate in an economic way against Canada?
There's not that many. I mean, there are small things that they could do, but realistically, I don't think there'd be that much pain directly from Canada. I think, the much bigger concern would be, different kinds of warfare, not economic warfare, whether it's cyber or, something much worse than that. It's interesting. Our economy it's got somewhat similar structure to Russia. We depend very heavily on oil and other commodities. So frankly, we're not that dependent directly on the Russian economy. I've got other concerns on that front. However, Russia can do real damage to Europe, if they cut off the flow of oil and gas.
Okay. Hey, very interesting conversation. Thank you so much for joining us today on Bank of Canada Day. Great to hear from you.
Oh, you're welcome, Rob. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, the chief economist at BMO Capital Markets. That's Doug Porter. Gas prices next with Dan McTagg from Canadians for Affordable Energy, former Liberal MP, and our gas price wizard. What will the price be tomorrow? Who knows? Well, maybe Dan knows. He's coming up on the Rob Snow Show on City News.
So the birth of absinthe was 2002, I think, 2003, and I was working at Urban Bistro, happily, where Allium is now. And then the space where Holland Cafe was came up. It's on the corner of Spencer and Holland. And I spoke to the landlord, and there's a lot of interest from a lot of other people, but he and I just, got along super well, and he put a lot of faith in me. So Carmen Turner is his name. He gave me the lease to the place and really pretty much gave me all the equipment in the place. So I was really lucky. I've been really lucky with landlords that way, actually, both my current landlord and Carmen Turner. Because if there hadn't been Carmen Turner, there wouldn't have been Absinthe. So we were there for a few years and just sort of outgrew the place. And then now we're here. It's obviously been tough, and it's been tough for everyone. I mean, that's been the big democratic sweep of, like, in restaurants and the hospitality and the arts that we were talking about earlier. It's like everybody's been impacted pretty much the same. From everybody that I talked to, we're down 80%. We're climbing out now. I think one of the saddest things is like everybody, we went down to 2 employees from 25, and we're now at 4, and we're bringing 2 new people on this week, so we'll be at 6. So it's, little steps. So it's been tough. It's, I've got the most expensive clubhouse ever here, because some days you come and you don't do any business, but you're here. But I'm grateful for what I do have. I think everybody's optimistic now, not necessarily just about the vaccine, but about like the vaccine, spring, being able to be outside. I think you're going to see a lot of like pop-up things happen in parking lots and on sidewalks and all, and like that, rather than being actually inside somebody's commerce. I think we'd like to take it outside. I know my staff would. My staff like the outdoors now, all of a sudden, all 4 of us. 6 soon. But we'll be doing some business in the patio in the parking lot, and we have a patio out front. And I think I hope other restaurants and stores will do the same. I hope that they take advantage of like the sidewalk and doing sort of, guerrilla marketing and stuff like that, and really shaking it up a bit. You can find us at Absinthe Cafe at 1208 Wellington Street West in Hintonburg, and you can find us online at absinthecafe.ca.
Firm.
Fair.
Fun.
The Rob Snow Show returns
On Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM.
and 1310 AM.
Okay, we're having a tough time getting in touch with Dan Mattek. He has done a lot of media already today, I think, so he may be running behind. But if we are able to connect with him, we will connect with him. It's 11:48 now. It was great to have Doug Porter on and get his take on the inflationary environment with an interest rate increase today from the Bank of Canada. And the Bank of Canada saying that inflation is pervasive now. And you heard Doug say it's not just about fuel. It's not just about food prices. It's pervasive. It's throughout the economy now. So while the Bank of Canada is making headlines here in our country, the chair of the U.S. Federal Reserve, the biggest central bank in the world,
3 years, or do you say
is Jerome Powell, and he's
1%
testifying actually for the next couple of days, I believe, in Washington before the U.S. Congress. A little bit.
and sort of adjust it as you go?
So the way we did it
Fed
last
chair.
time is we set a cap on the amount that will run off, and anything above that gets reinvested for both MBS, mortgage-backed securities, and for treasuries. We haven't had that discussion at the committee. We will have it in 2 weeks. But I guess it takes. It turns out that the level of the cap doesn't really matter that much for how long it takes. Something in the range of 3 years to get back to where you're trying to get to. And the way we define that, what is the end? The end. We look at the size of the economy, the size of the banking system, and we ask, what's the level of reserves that we'll need at that point? and so we set a a course for that place, and then as we start to get close to it, we might slow down a little bit, like as though it were an airplane, and that's the way it will work. But I think something in the range of 3 years to get back to what the balance sheet needs to be, which is basically reflective of the public's demand for our liabilities plus a buffer, and what we call ample reserves.
Yeah. So it's central bank day. The Bank of Canada raising interest rates. That's Jerome Powell. He's the chair of the U.S. Fed. He's testifying before Congress now about the inflationary environment there. I mean, Joe Biden mentioned it yesterday about gas prices in his State of the Union address. So it's top of mind everywhere right now. Still no luck with Dan McTagg, the gas price guru. Sam LaPrade is with me in studio. She's getting ready for the Sam LaPrade Show. Comes up right after your noon news update from our team at City News.
Absolutely.
Did you have to get gas lately? You're going to fill up before it goes up, or
so
what?
I have to tell you, I have to get gas when I leave here, or I'm not getting home, Rob.
Okay.
I was waiting.
You're like running on fumes, are
exactly.
you? Okay.
I pulled down like 23 kilometers. That's not going to get me home. So that's how tight it was.
That's what it says, that little thing that says range on your...
Exactly. 23 kilometers.
Oh, see, on my vehicle, like, it would never let you get down. It would kind of go blank.
Oh,
before
okay.
I think it's about 40 kilometers. It just says.
It's like I play roulette every day, you know.
Holy cow.
Mm-hmm. But
it's wild, though, the price of gas. Though,
absolutely.
Right?
And
that hurts people, Sam.
100% hurts people. And, I think about, as you know, I do a lot of nonprofit work. A lot of them are driving vehicles. You think about the food bank, the impact it would have on the food bank.
Yeah.
Right? Those 5 trucks out every single day.
Yeah. Salvation Army has a van that goes around when it's really cold outside and, helping the homeless, trying to get them off the street, those kinds of things, right? So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
You were talking about the interest rate as well going up. I've bought a new home, which I'm not going to move until October. So, of course, I've been watching that very closely in terms of mortgage rates as well.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really, so I'm sort of holding my breath today about the Bank of Canada announcement.
Yeah. Gosh, it's such a complicated world, isn't it, right
absolutely.
now? I have to read a little story. This was from CBS News out of Washington about what could be the duration of this Ukraine war, because it's a week today, right?
I know,
it's a week today. It could last years.
That's what I'm petrified of, to be honest.
This is CBS News, Washington, D.C., quote, given the durability of the Ukrainian resistance and its long history of pushing Russia back, the U.S. and Western powers do not believe that this will be a short war. The UK's foreign secretary estimates it could be a 10-year war. Lawmakers at the Capitol were told Monday it is likely to last 10, 15, or 20 years.
Wow. It's hard to hear about.
And that ultimately Russia will lose. But then you think about it. The United States was in Afghanistan for 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
The Soviets were in Afghanistan for a decade.
Mm-hmm.
The war in Iraq lasted almost 9 years. Vietnam, more than a decade, depending on what metric you use. Syrian civil war, 10 years and still going on. Yemeni civil war, 7 years and still going on. So this has been 1 week. 1 week. All over the news. 24/7, as well it should be.
I mean, those times that you mentioned.
2032? 2032? Right?
I mean,
and what would be left of the country?
Agreed. I mean, you see the visuals now coming out of Ukraine, and it's hard to believe that, especially when they do the comparatives, Rob, when you see what the building looked like, the week before and what the building looks like today, you think you can't believe that that's been a week.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, Rob, but I've been watching, and I find it really difficult to hear about the children who have lost their lives.
Yeah.
And to your point, it's only a week. And when you think about the generations of people, you mentioned 10-year war, 20-year war. Those are generations that only will ever know war.
Sure. Yeah, yeah. So what do you have coming up? Sam's show is on at noon, right after the noon news here on City News. What do you have coming up?
We have a really interesting guest right off the top. You know, David Ross from Ross Video.
Ross Video, yeah.
Of
sure,
course,
yeah.
CEO, great Canadian company, great philanthropist. He's going to
Great
be
Ottawa company, right?
Great Ottawa company, very proud, did some great work at the Super Bowl. But our conversation today will be not really about business, Rob. It's going to be all about Ukraine.
Oh, really?
We made quite a big announcement today.
Oh, you're going to break some news.
It's very exciting in a humanitarian way.
Oh, good.
As well, we have...
What else do you have? Yep.
Marie LeMay is going to join us. She's the
Now,
CEO.
why do I recognize that name?
She was with the government for a long time. She's with the Royal Mint.
Yeah, okay.
So she's going to be talking as well about an initiative to help Ukraine.
Okay.
And then a little bit later, Chris Day is going to join us to talk about, of course, the political side of all of
politics
this.
of it all. He's so good on that.
Absolutely.
Especially on the foreign affairs side. Chris worked for John Baird and basically traveled the world.
Right.
That's why it was so interesting for my show to have Gary Keller on. Gary used to work for John Baird too, so they've kind of seen how foreign affairs ministers
for sure
are in action. So Chris will have that experience. So Eugene Melnyk, big letter in the newspaper today. The Ukrainian national anthem will be played before every Senator's home game, as well as the Canadian-U.S. anthems. And upcoming 50-50 draws will allow the Senators Community Foundation to donate some of the organizations currently providing humanitarian and medical assistance. And it says the Senators will work with the Ukrainian community in Ottawa to find ways in which Canadian Tire Centre may be used as a drop-off point to collect donations, clothing, medical supplies, other items for those in need. So,
and I hope Mr. Melnyk, Mr. Ross. I'm hoping, Rob, that this is just the beginning of leaders, whether it be business or community leaders, stepping up to make that impact. We heard yesterday from Mayor Sean Panko, who has his grandparents, Ukrainian, of course, came to this country, and how he's hoping, and even in that country, in that small town, to be able to help refugees coming from Ukraine, if that is a possibility in the future.
Okay, so that's all on the Sam LaPrade Show. Thank you for jumping in here, Sam.
My pleasure.
Great to see you. Sam LaPrade coming up right after the noon news, right after our big newscast at noon here on City News.
The Rob Snow Show.
Weekdays at 9 on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Number 1 for local news in Ottawa and the Valley.
The Rob Snow Show, brought to you by Myers Automotive Group.
This program is brought to you by NB.